IB Nation, what's going on? Welcome to the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on Irish Breakdown Podcast, bringing you the latest, most important information that you need from the Notre Dame side of recruiting. I am Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at irishbreakdown.com, joined by my man, Sean Davis, Recruiting Analyst here at irishbreakdown.com, as well as the co-host of the Lucky Lefty Podcast that you can find at CFB Nation on your favorite podcast platform. You can also go to their YouTube channel. Just search Lucky Lefty Podcast. You'll find it right on the YouTube channel. Appreciate you all for hopping in, man. For people that are joining us live here on a Monday, they know that we can never have a recruiting show without some type of news potentially breaking. So we want to get this out of the way, and then we have a couple format issues for the rest of the week from a podcast perspective that we want to hit, because the crux of the show today, the topic of the show, is that we want to talk about some of our favorite 2024 recruits on the offensive side of the football that is currently on the board for Notre Dame. So we're going to take a look at some film. We're going to talk about some of these football players. We're going to talk about any latest that we can give you all. There was a great intel piece at boards.irishbreakdown.com earlier today. I know me, Brian, and Sean were kind of going back and forth and putting this intel piece together. A lot of the latest stuff that we can come up with, obviously. And I think it was a really good intel piece. We had I think it was Dan Mulligan, if I have that right, who said it was a great intel piece on the board. We really do appreciate that. So yes, go to the boards.irishbreakdown.com. You'll get the latest recruiting intel. But Sean, I just want to get this out of the way now, because I know we're going to talk about this a ton during the mailbag section. But there's a lot of rumors and speculation out there right now. I know by a couple different platforms that Joe Rudolph, who was formerly of the University of Wisconsin and University of Pittsburgh, was the Wisconsin offensive line coach during some pretty nice stretch of years, obviously with Jonathan Taylor at the helm. And then most recently, he was with Virginia Tech this past year under Brent Pry and that new regime. So there is a conversation that is happening. There is some news out there that their expectation is that Joe Rudolph may be the next offensive line coach at the University of Notre Dame. Well, also on boards.irishbreakdown.com, you should go sign up there as well. I'll give you a little in-depth into this. When news started breaking, Brian Driscoll, being the grinder that he is, Sean, despite being at he's at a little bit of a meeting right now, went to kind of, hit up his sources and get the inside scoop. So basically what is happening here is, and we'll just kind of give you guys a little bit of a glimpse, Joe Rudolph is expected to interview for the Notre Dame offensive line coach position tomorrow. That position has not formally been offered to him, but that interview is set up and expected to go through. If everything does go well, there is an expectation that he will be the guy that will be offered the opportunity to be the next offensive line coach at the University of Notre Dame. So let's not jump the gun just yet. It looks very promising. There is an interview in the future, but that interview has not happened yet. That offer has not been put on the table yet. So it looks promising, right? But we have been here a couple times this offseason already, Sean, where we jumped the gun a little bit too much. Let's not jump the gun. All right. Yeah. This is in the works. We'll see if it works out. We'll see if it's offered. But that's kind of where we are, is that there obviously is some heat behind Joe Rudolph potentially being the next offensive line coach at the University of Notre Dame. And we'll hit on that, of course, in the mailbag here. But just kind of wanted to update you all. And again, boards.irishbreakdown.com had a little bit of an update on it. He has not been offered the job, but it is trending that way as long as the interview process and everything goes well tomorrow. We expect it to we expect that to be the way that Notre Dame might want to go, as long as everything checks out. Sean, a couple programming. Sorry, go ahead.
You have an initial vibe?
Initial vibe. So this is what initially happened to me. Brian, and I know we talked about this on the show last week. We talked about the fact that Joe Rudolph and AJ Vlasic were the guys that were being talked about most as far as being potentially the next offensive line coach in Notre Dame, at least the guys that are high on Notre Dame's board. Mm-hmm. Sean, to be very honest, I obviously know Joe Rudolph's name. I know that he did some good things at the University of Wisconsin. I know he did some good things at the University of Pittsburgh. Cool. I didn't know enough about him, though, to have like a legitimate formulated opinion, right? Like I could only go by what the box score told me, what his resume looked like. So at the time, I mean, we talked about it. It looks good on paper. I know Brian wasn't like, the biggest fan of him, but I mean, I know that we'll obviously have a little bit more of in-depth conversations, but on the surface, it looks like a really good hire, potentially, if it does happen. It looks like that way. But again, I mean, there's the recruiting background, which he's done a lot of good stuff in recruiting. I know there was a question about him as a recruiter. We'll hit on in the mailbag. We'll see. We'll see. And yeah. But so that's my initial conversation, Sean, is like, it looks good on the surface. I just need to do more research, if that makes sense.
If you go to his Wikipedia page, he's already known as the Notre Dame offensive line coach. That's crazy, right? It's crazy. But no, I think initially, as someone with, although minimal head coaching experience, I think that was 2014 at Pittsburgh. Job he did at Wisconsin. Look, I think Notre Dame ended up getting a solid coach. And now, just like Jared Parker, we sit and wait.
Yes.
Sit and wait. Good coach, solid. We sit and wait and see how things develop for Notre Dame.
Yep, and obviously we'll get into what Joe Rudolph's history as a recruiter is, because someone asked about that. So we'll get in that during the mailbag section. But Sean, I think you hit on it, man. I think there's a lot to like about the hire if everything does go well at the interview tomorrow, and that is the direction Notre Dame goes in. But again, let's not jump the gun just yet. Has not happened yet. I mean, there was points this offseason where you thought that there was going to be a different offensive coordinator. There was points this offseason where you thought Notre Dame would have already had their offensive line coach potentially. Like, we've been down this rabbit hole a few different times, man. Been down this path. And, so let it play out. Let it play out. I know that's Brian's thing, but, let's just chill on it for a little bit, man. Sean, a couple of programming updates I just want to let everybody know about before we get into the main topic of the show today. Tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern time, on IB Nation Sports Talk, Brian Driscoll, publisher here at IrishBreakdown.com, will be joining Sean Stiers on the show to talk about the latest in offensive line coaching conversations. So I'm sure they'll hit a lot on Joe Rudolph. I'm sure they'll hit a lot about the state and what needs to happen next. All that great stuff. And so make sure to tune in tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern time for IB Nation Sports Talk to catch Driscoll and Sean Stiers kind of break down this offensive line coaching carousel, or
I'm wondering if I should bring this up now. I'm sorry. By any chance, did you see Joe Rudolph's tweet today?
Yes, I did see it. Where it basically was, just kind of speaking well of Virginia Tech and made it sound like he was leaving, type of thing. Yeah,
that's very weird, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that there's a lot of things behind here, right, Sean? I mean, it makes sense with all the events that are transpiring. It does make sense, but we'll wait until it obviously is official here. And Salty, I'm about to kick you out with these bad puns, sir. These are really bad puns. Squirrels down rabbit holes. I'm about to throw them out of the chat, Sean. I'm about to throw them out. But that is the programming announcement there. IB Nation Sports Talk tonight. Brian Driscoll will be on. Also, just to kind of keep everybody update on the rest of the week. For the remainder of the week, this show, Irish Breakdown podcast, will be at 2 o'clock Eastern time the rest of the week. You know who's going to be on there as well, too, right, Sean? You know who's going to be on the rest of the week? It's Brian Driscoll. And your man, Sean Davis, is going to be on the show the rest of the week because your boy, Ryan Roberts, is going to be heading down to the NFL Scouting Combine tomorrow afternoon. So I'll be down in the Combine until Saturday, be able to sit down with a lot of the prospects there, including obviously some of these star Notre Dame players that are on the scene in Indianapolis. So I'll have a lot of nice intel for you guys the rest of the week. There's going to be a rumor mill on the message board. There's going to be a lot of content, obviously, on Isaiah Foskey, Michael Mayer, Brandon Joseph, Jared Patterson, the 4 players who are slated to participate in the 2023 NFL Scouting Combine. So I'll be down there. I won't be on the show the rest of the week, but Sean Davis has me covered as always. And I already mentioned that recruiting intel that is on the message board that you all should go and take a look at because it is it's really interesting. And someone just said something about the Wikipedia stuff, Sean, that you talked about. All I know, man, is I can go on Wikipedia right now and change some stuff up, too. I can make myself the Notre Dame offensive line coach if I felt like it, all right? So let's not get the Wikipedia too much here. But, Sean, 10 minutes, and we haven't even started the topic yet. Can we start the topic today, sir? Can we talk about it?
Let's get to it.
Love it, man. So we are going to be talking today about some of our favorite 2024 recruits that are on Notre Dame's board on the offensive side of the football. We have some running backs for you, got some wide receivers, got a couple tight ends, even got an offensive lineman that we want to break down. So we'll be talking about the film a little bit. I'll be mostly popping the film up, and we'll just kind of have it in passing. We're not going to as much dive deep into the film. I just want everybody that's watching live with us on YouTube to be able to know the player that we're talking about a little bit and the talent that they have to display. These are players, for the most part, that Notre Dame is very high on. I think actually all the players, well, all of them are definitely on Notre Dame's board. There are some that they're pushing more than others, but we'll talk about the state of the recruiting for them as well. We'll talk about what we like about them, a little bit of their backgrounds. We'll really dive deep into some of these prospects. And at the end, before our mailbag today, I also have a nice interview for you all. I got to sit down with a top 2024 target for Notre Dame that I think everyone's really going to dig. And, of course, mailbag questions. Hit that MB in the chat with your question afterwards, and we'll hit that mailbag at the end. So, Sean, we have a lot of players we want to get to today, man, and it's going to be a lot of fun, a whole lot of fun. I'm very interested to see how the rest of this offensive class, just in general, Sean, kicks off for Notre Dame, because there's a lot of talented kids on the board, man. And comparative to the defensive class, I think Notre Dame's in a lot better spot with some of the offensive players, especially that we'll talk about today, and some of their top offensive targets comparative to where they are defensively in a couple spots. But, man, after a really good class, I thought, last year for Notre Dame offensively, getting the four-man wide receiver class they got, getting Jeremiah Love, getting the five-man offensive line group, getting Kenny Minchey pretty late there, a quarterback. Sean, I think Notre Dame has a chance to really pull together a really talented offensive group in 2024.
Man, that goes without saying. And it goes to the start that they got off to, right? Anytime you start off with the quarterback in the class, that's a really good sign for your offensive side of the ball. And then at the time that they got Cam Williams, I think we can both agree that he was severely underrated at the time he decided to join the class right off of the Irish invasion. And then Jack Larson is the same way. So unfortunately, you know how recruiting rankings work when it comes to Notre Dame commits. I'm shocked to kind of see Cam Williams actually continue to climb. But at the end of the day, I'm sure he'll take a short little dip on the back end along Sean, with the top guys in offensive class.
He was so good as a junior, man. They could not validate not giving him a bump, man. They couldn't validate it.
Their reps would have been on the line if they didn't give him what he richly deserved with his play in his junior season. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So really talented baseline, obviously. You got CJ Carr, 2024 five-star caliber quarterback in the class. You got Cam Williams, who Sean just mentioned a little bit. You got Aeneas Williams, who's rated as Rivals' #1 all-purpose back in the 2024 class. You also have Peter Jones, the offensive line, and Jack Larson at tight end. So very good start to the class. I know David Lowe's been asking this one for a couple of days, Sean, so I just want to hit on this one real quick. Say, can we get a CJ Carr update today? There was an update, David, if you were on the message board. Put out some recruiting intel today, and CJ Carr was a part of that conversation. Multiple sources that we've talked to, both from a player perspective, both from sources closer to Notre Dame perspective. CJ Carr seems very solid to Notre Dame, and I would not worry about that one as it currently stands. I think they're good there. I think they're good there.
Were people actually worried?
Oh, a lot of people were worried.
Yeah.
Sean, man, Tommy went down to Alabama. Julian Sayans going somewhere else now, and CJ's going to go to Alabama with it's a whole thing, man. It's the whole thing, but yeah, that's it, man. That's it. I mean, I get it though, right? I mean, he's a very talented quarterback. There's no doubt. So, and if we're gonna panic, I get that one. I get that one. But I think there is a great intel piece though. I would, if you're not signed up to message board, I think you are, but if you're not, I would go check it out, man, because I think it would. I think there's a lot of good stuff there. So, Sean, let's talk about a running back that we have never talked about on the show, I don't think we've talked about this kid.
I don't think so.
Because he hasn't been on the offer list too long, only a few weeks here. Running back out of Texas, name is Kedron Young, who we're told from our sources that Notre Dame is very high on this young man, Sean. Listed 5'11", 205 pounds, out of the state of Texas, out of Lufkin High School. As you can see, had a pretty dynamic junior season.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame's high on this kid, man. They're very high on this kid. They have Aeneas Williams in the class, who is that great all-purpose back that I talked about, right? But there is some want to Notre Dame, and this was on the intel piece that was posted today, to want to get a bigger back in this class. That's a thing that Notre Dame really wants to do to pair with Aeneas, because Aeneas is 5'10", 200 pounds, 195, somewhere in that ballpark. He's not the biggest back in the world. This Kedron Young kid, Sean, is a guy that Notre Dame really likes, because I think you see it very quickly, man. This kid is densely built, man. Densely built. So, interesting kid, man, to potentially pair with Aeneas, because he is the complete opposite of what Aeneas Williams is, and I think that's what Notre Dame's looking for.
Built very solid, low to the ground, great center of gravity, big trunk legs. You saw right there on the first highlight how his ability to jump cut and be physical in the hole and break tackles and drag people 2 to 3 yards at the first contact. You're absolutely right. He's a different type of running back. He's the big back you need, especially if this offense on the Jared Parker is going to continue to evolve and pretty much go based upon the box, right? As Jared Parker said that.
Yeah.
Like, the box is going to dictate what we do. And if you want to continue to put 8 in the box, then guess what? We're going to find a way to attack you on the outside. So you have a big back like this, and you start to get him in light boxes as the young receiving core in the 23 class starts to mature and get better and make more of an impact. You bring a young man like this, like him in, who can hit you with power and speed. It's a great addition, a great thunder and lightning that could be formed in Notre Dame with him and Aeneas Williams.
And he's a really interesting one, man, because he's a bigger back, obviously. We talked about 220, 225. I think you said it perfectly, Sean. He's built low to the ground. He's got a solid build. He's got kind of that low center of gravity. But he's got a little more straight line speed than you would anticipate, man. I was expecting him to be a little bit of a plotter, but I mean, he can get up and go a little bit when he's out in the open. And then the other big thing, Sean, is that you mentioned, and I wanted to reiterate, a Texas kid, man. Notre Dame already has Leonard Moore in the 2024 class committed. You just are coming off of having a 4-man class in 2023 with Braylon James, Jaden Greathouse, Caleb Smith, and Micah Bell. Continuing to tap into the Texas pipeline to a guy like a Kedron Young, hopefully a Peyton Pierce at linebacker, along with a Leonard Moore. Getting to Texas is so paramount, man. And I really think Kedron Young is an interesting football player that people need to get their eyes on more, because we haven't talked about him at all. Because, again, he's kind of a newer guy to the board, and there are still talented running backs on the board for Notre Dame. I do think that Kedron Young is a guy that Notre Dame fans need to keep very close eyes on.
Look, I remember the first time I saw his film, which was – am I still muted? Okay. Man, first time I saw his film after the offer, I think I watched maybe like the first 2 plays, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, this is different, because I couldn't remember the last time maybe like Tony Jones was maybe the comp of the last player that played at Notre Dame at the running back position that I felt like was a true low center of gravity thumper, interior runner like this young man, but just has a different level of speed. So I know Aeneas is the number 1 all-purpose back, but I would be very interested in seeing how this young man develops in the passing game, because I think he has the talent and the athleticism that once he gets to Notre Dame, his game can expand. I think the way he's used down in Texas is that big bruising back. You see right there, seems like they're in a 21 or 20 personnel set, 6 men in the box. And just taking advantage, man, of the big guy he is. No one can bring him down. He's picking up blitzes right there. Very physical running back. You love to see that. You love to see that from this young man. And like you said, stamping the flag in the state of Texas once again, Ryan. A great job. Chancey Stuckey with the wide receiver position. Now Dylan McCullough trying to go down there and get a running back from down there. Notre Dame's doing a fantastic job of really, extending the tentacles of their recruiting base beyond the Midwest, getting to the South, getting up to the Northeast, reaching out to the West Coast. We'll get to a couple of those young men today. you have to be very impressed with what they're doing. And I know the fan base is kind of like a little antsy after Notre Dame went on a run with commitments early. They're antsy for the months of March, April, going into the summer months and adding to the class. But based upon what we're hearing with Dylan McCullough and where the staff sits with this young man and some of the other talented players on the offensive side that we're about to talk about today, Notre Dame is going to come away. If I had to say it today, they're definitely going to improve on the offensive haul that they had in 23 when it comes to the 24 class. Now, how much of a haul that's going to be, because it can go from, man, getting a Ryan Wingo, getting a Jeremiah McClellan, getting a Carter Nelson, getting a Riddell from St. Louis. Like, if you're talking about getting all four of those guys in the class, you're talking about a home run grand slam class, right? That would be very difficult. But Notre Dame is definitely in consideration, high consideration from all of those young men. So when you really think about that, you feel pretty good with the state of offensive recruiting from the Notre Dame staff right now, even with the loss of your offensive coordinator and your offensive line coach. I'm really happy that those losses happened during the dead period, in my opinion. That was really the best time for those losses to happen. If it had happened earlier, because Tommy was very pivotal for Notre Dame from a recruiting standpoint in the months of January and early February. So to lose the coaches that you lost, that was the perfect time, if there could be a perfect time to lose coaches on your staff.
Sean, I'm going to do just a quick mic check. I don't like doing this on air, man, but can you hear me clearly now? I know there was a little bit of popping, so I should be good now? Okay. Sorry, folks, about that, man. Tech issues are always fun. They're always fun, especially when you're on a live show where you have to try to figure stuff out in the background as well. But, Sean, I mean, again, man, I think you hit on it perfectly there because I was able to listen in, obviously, while I was finishing up. What's that?
I think the pop came back.
Oh, no. Seriously? Is it still going?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like a little small crackle, just a little bit.
Right.
I mean, you sound Sean, good, but it's minor.
All right, well, let's do this, man. Let's do this. I'll still try to figure this out in the back end for a second. We're gonna introduce for us Darian Dupree, and I'll get some highlights for him while I figure this out.
Yeah, Darian Dupree, 5'10". Last time I checked, he's sitting at about 195 pounds. At Notre Dame, he could sit at about 210, 215 as a running back out of Chicago, Mount Carmel. He's a 4-star. This kid really came on for the state champion Mount Carmel Caravan on last year. He was injured after dominating early against Loyola Academy on national TV. And I saw him live and in person against Justin Scott and St. Ignatius. And he was the best player on the field, without a doubt, on that night as Mount Carmel went on to dominate St. Ignatius. So this young man, what I love about him is he has the ability to do everything, right? If you have the number one all-purpose back in the fold already in Aeneas Williams, then heck, you might as well add another one when it comes to Darian Dupree. He's a fantastic young man. And, Darian Dupree. I love Mount Carmel's field. Ryan's in the background. I'm telling Ryan, if you ever come to Chicago, please go to Mount Carmel's home stadium. It's a fantastic, fantastic viewing for high school football fans. Like you said, breaks the tackle, runs inside, runs outside, can catch the ball. It's a great screen player, great special team return game. Once again, he's not going to blow you away, run 4-3, anything like that. But when he has the ball in his hands, it's not a lot of people on the field that are able to track him down. Jump cut right there. The patience, balance, toughness, break tackles, drag guys. This kid is everything you want. Remember, he was there at the Irish Invasion with C.J. Carr, Jack Larson, and Cam Williams. Has a great relationship with Cam Williams. And the Chicago players, the buzz is a lot of them have conversations about playing together. That's him, Lightfoot, Justin Scott. They have these conversations. So whether or not that comes to fruition, this is the national televised game I was talking about against Loyola Academy. That was ranked number 1. And at that point, I think they were ranked like 18th nationally. And he went in there on their home field and just ate them alive. Jump cut, keeps his balance after slipping right there. A lot of people might think about Theo Riddick when they watch him play. I think he's a little more athletic, a little bit faster than Theo Riddick. But this young man can do it all. Like I said, they split him out wide, bunch set to the right. He runs a slant. And he shows his outside zone game. They have the counter pulling offensive lineman coming around with him. He takes it to the house. Once again, they like to line him up, bunch set to the right. This time he kind of runs like a wheel route, fade route to the corner. This young man can do it all. When we talk about Kedron Young and Darian Dupree, IB Nation, look, you guys can talk about it in the chat. Like, which one would you prefer to have at Notre Dame? I'm sure it's going to be a very hard decision because you can't go wrong with either one of these guys. Here he is just running a fly route against a defensive back, blows by him, had about 3 to 5 yards of separation. Once again, out route, gets a block from the wide receiver, takes it to the house. You're right. I don't know, Salty. I don't know how he got that wide open. It was obviously zone coverage, and they blew the coverage. He's so tough. And he's put in so much work on his body. This is why I really love this kid. He puts in so much work on his body. And I think the first time I saw him at Mount Carmel as a freshman, Darian might have been somewhere around 165 to 170. And for him to get up to like 190 right now shows you the tremendous work he's put in, not only, from nutrition, but the work he's put in the weight room. They always have a great they have a great record at Mount Carmel, being able to get kids in, put the right weight on them, turn them into grown men, and make them impressive high school players that can go on and dominate on the college level. So when you talk about Darian Dupree, you're talking about an all-around running back, someone that can get the job done. And whether it's Darian Dupree or Kedron Young out of the state of Texas, Notre Dame can't go wrong adding to this offensive class in 2024. Look, Free J Free, he says, I'll go with Dupree. I think he can do a lot more as a wide receiver. That's very interesting. If Notre Dame wide receiver room, if the wide receiver room looked like or had the same depth of 2 to 3 years ago, I probably would lean to Dupree with that particular argument. But now that the wide receiver room has depth and talent and young talent, and you're looking to add more to the wide receiver room, that thumper that Kedron Young is becomes very appealing. But it's always great to have running backs to catch the ball out the backfield because most of the time they're going up against linebackers, and that's an extreme disadvantage. John Clement, thank you for tapping in. He says, man, Kedron Young. I agree with that. That's kind of like what Aldrich Estime is to Logan Diggs, right? He's the thumper. Even though Logan Diggs is, man, I don't know. I wouldn't say he's as physical as Aldrich Estime, but he's not a soft runner. It's a lot of things you can say about Logan Diggs, right? Even though he turned on the Jets and that touchdown reception against South Carolina in the Gator Bowl, you can say a lot of things about Logan Diggs. One thing you cannot say about him, you go watch North Carolina, you go watch Clemson, he is a tough son of a gun. Even that tough touchdown run he had late in the Gator Bowl that we thought sealed it at that point in time, he's a great inside runner, and he runs hard. He runs very hard. So once again, I see you guys talking about Joe Rudolph. The reports are out there. 247 Sports, I guess, reported that he is expected to be named the offensive line coach. Brian Driscoll's in the background, and he's working feverishly, as we say, to confirm some things to make sure that we can give you the best report when things happen. Right? Yes. It's like I saw the Wikipedia page. We saw Joe Rudolph's tweet. So maybe he feels, well, at least Joe Rudolph feels like he's getting ready to leave Virginia Tech University for some reason, or otherwise he would not have put out that tweet. Joe Medina, this is, Joe, specify this for me. Joe Medina, thank you for tapping in. Says Diggs is the best back on the roster. Specify that for me, Joe. Best all-around back, best pure running back. What are you saying when you say something like that? So it's very interesting. Notre Dame may have found their offensive line coach and Joe Rudolph. It's going to be very interesting to see how things play out. But, initial reaction before it is official, if that is indeed the case and he is the hire, then let's see. Let's rock out. Let's see what we have. So once again, we're talking about the running backs, Darian Dupree out of Chicago, Mount Carmel, and the young man from Texas, Kedron Young. Kedron Young, for me, the one thing that stands out, besides his stature and his style of running, is he really does have good speed for a back that you really wouldn't expect that from. And that's in the state of Texas, right? He's playing against really good competition down there. So you watch film on him being able to break away from guys. He's competing against some great athletes in that state. So to see that he has that gear, it shows well. You have to feel really good about him. I love where Notre Dame sits with him. And I think he's very aware, along with other top athletes. This is why Notre Dame planted their flag in the state of Texas last year under this staff was so vitally important, because not only was it about the 23 class, right? Because they missed out on some guys in the state of Texas that I think any school would have loved to bring into the fold, any school. But they planted the flag, and by planting the flag, they made themselves noticeable to the 24 kids in Texas, to the 25 kids in Texas, to the 26 kids in Texas. So now it's an expectation. When you're a great player in Texas, you have an expectation of thinking about Notre Dame. Why? Man, Jaden Greathouse went to Notre Dame. Braylon James went to Notre Dame, so on and so forth. That's how it happens. When you get the great players from a state to go to particular universities or go to particular institutions, just look at St. Louis. Don't think it's strange that Brian Kelly and his staff went into St. Louis, got some of the top players, and then some of the other top players in the 23 class, Christian Gray, Jeremiah Love. They noticed what the players before them that they watched growing up, what they were doing and where they were matriculating to. That has a profound impact. So don't take it lightly what Notre Dame did by planting the flag last year in the recruiting base of the state of Texas, and what it could benefit them with a young man like Kedron Young in the class of 2024. Good to have you back, Double R. You good?
I don't know, man. We'll see in a minute, I guess. I don't know how it sounds to you right now, but
it sounds good right now, bro.
All right, man. Sean, reason number 1,603,000 why I hate technology sometimes, man. I just don't understand it. Like, I had to reset my whole dang laptop, man. Like, I had to restart everything. It was fun, man. It was fun. But so we talked about, thanks, Gideon. I appreciate y'all. K-Mac, appreciate it so much. I do this for you guys, man. I fight the struggle every day of stupid technology just to try to give you guys good content. So I apologize to everybody as well. I know it's super annoying to kind of, listen to and work through and all that good stuff. But Sean, I'm back, man. So let's keep moving. I know you talked a lot about the running backs, man. It's a very interesting running back class. I mean, like you said, we talked about Kedron Young. Talk about Darian Dupree. I mean, Anthony Carey is another kid out of Florida that Notre Dame is still obviously very high on, and we'll see how that obviously keeps moving. But let's move into some wide receivers, man. Sean, I was interested for this one, though. I was interested for this one because there's a lot of talented receivers on the board, a lot of talented ones. You know, the Ryan Wingos of the world, the Jeremiah McClellans, the Emmett Mosleys, a lot of talented receiver, Mike Matthews. There's a lot of them. One guy that you wanted to talk about that we talked about a little bit on this show, I think at one point, but we're about to hit it up right here, man. This is David Washington, who's out of the state of Nevada, was at Arborview High School. He obviously has informed everyone recently that he will not be playing at Arborview his senior year. There were some issues with bullying or something, and I checked in with him, and he's all good. But yeah, there was some complications that he's choosing a different high school to play senior year at. But Sean, talking about this kid, man, because he's listed around 6'2", 6'1", 195 pounds or so. What do you like about David Washington, man? Why was he a guy that you wanted to talk about?
Man, his physicality and his hands. Number one, the physicality he plays with at the position. I'm not worried about him getting off bump and run. Like when you go up against the best teams, they're going to play man to man, and they're going to dare you to throw the ball. This is a kid that's going to get off bump and run coverage. He's physical. He's not going to allow you to deter him off his route. And I love that. And I see that at the high school level, which means he's going to get better. He can break tackles, yards after the catch. And then every time I see him, he's using his hands to catch the ball, man. The ball is not really getting into his chest the majority of the time, especially when he's going across the middle. He's fearless. Man, the first time I saw his film, I was like, yo, I love this kid. I love this kid. And he's the type of kid, I see a little Nuke Hopkins, honestly, when I watch him.
Ooh,
not from
that's interesting.
Not from a size standpoint, but just the way he runs and the physicality that he plays with. Because I don't think he's going to blow you away with his speed or anything like that. But he's going to be really good at every area you need to be good at as a wide receiver. And he's going to make plays. That's what it's about, right, Ryan? Can you make plays? Like you're about to go to the combine, my brother. There's going to be a lot of what do they call them? People that come out in shorts and show that they're elite.
Yeah.
For the next week, like, oh, look at me, I'm elite. And when they take the football field and pass, they're going to end up being James.
Sure,
they're going to end up being James for teams, and teams are going to be upset that they bought in to the combine instead of trusting the tape. Trust the tape on this young man. I don't care what the measurables end up being, what his 40 time is. If you trust the tape on this young man, you're getting a very physical and very productive wide receiver if you can get him to come to South Bend. I love this young man, David Washington, out of Nevada.
You're talking about we call them workout warriors, Sean, right? Yeah. The guys that look like the real deal in a pair of shorts, then you get the pads on them. They're not that guy, right? They're just not that guy.
Right.
David the Nuke Hopkins comparison, man, just from a play style perspective. The thing I love about David Washington is he attacks the football, man. He's got some strong hands, man, really strong hands. And I agree. I don't think that he's going to blow you away in one athletic area. Like, I think short area quickness is good. I think the speed is fine. It's good, but when you're talking about elite traits, I don't think he has one. But the one thing that he does well, and you mentioned it already, just gets open, man. He gets open. He catches the football. I mean, that's like the end all be all, and he makes plays. I mean, and there's some things that, you can't quantify with the 40 time. You can't quantify with the vertical leap. He just gets stuff done, man. Just gets stuff done. So I really did like the mention of him. I already had a couple wide receivers on the table that I want to talk about today. I know you had a couple more that we want to hit on, obviously, but he's a really, really talented kid. Really talented kid. He's got vines too. I think that he's going to be a kid that catch radius is going to be really good. He's just he's one of those clear projections, man. Nothing flashy, but get stuff done. I mean, even see him playing a little running back here and getting the job done, man. So David Washington, Nevada wide receiver. Some particulars about him that we just need to hit on real quick, Sean. He is going to be visiting Notre Dame for the first time in March 31st. He's going to be heading down there. For people that are into like the the timelines and the calendars. We are in a dead period currently. The dead period ends on the 28th of this month because there's 28 days, obviously, in February. So after February 28th, it now opens up, it becomes a quiet period instead of the dead period. And the quiet period is basically kids are allowed to now go visit schools. The visits that they've been setting up now for the last month or so, they're going to go out and they're going to see all these prospective schools. So that is, man, that's David Washington. And Sean, interesting notes. He has some family in Chicago. He has some family in Gary, Indiana. So he's got some Midwestern ties, right? Like he's not from, obviously, Indiana, but he is a person that has family in the Midwest, which will be interesting. And he's not a guy that I would say is on the top of the wide receiver board for Notre Dame right now. He's certainly on it, and it's certainly a guy that the staff likes. But, I mean, it's a really talented, loaded group. But, man, we'll see if those Midwestern ties and Chancey Stuckey can make some traction with David Washington here on March 31st.
He has quickly become one of my favorite players that Notre Dame was looking at on the offensive side of the ball. It's like, I think we had watched him before, if I'm not mistaken, together when he first got offered. And then I went back and watched him again. And I'm like, he reminds me of Nuke Hopkins. I don't know why Nuke jumped in my head, but I'm like, man, he plays and runs. Like when I'm watching him, he plays like Nuke Hopkins. Like he's all about making plays. Like I don't care where you put me, either man, took me to the boundary, field, slot, start me in the backfield, doesn't matter. Just give me the ball and I'll do the rest. And I was like, I love this kid because somebody we might talk about from Tampa, Florida, that was like my number one wide receiver. He was my number one guy. How we are, Ryan. Everybody wants to go for the easy ones, right? Like, Ryan Wingo. No. I'll put in some work. Watch some film. And I think we both do that, and we find some guys that rise to the top of our list, and we're like, I really like this kid, right? Because I remember the first time you told me about Carter Nelson, nobody was really on Carter Nelson like that.
And now everybody's in on Carter Nelson.
Everybody's on him now. Everybody's on the kid now. So it's crazy.
Yeah, man. You got, literally Alabama's offered now. Georgia's offered. All the SEC is offered Carter Nelson. They're all in on Carter Nelson right now, man, which is pretty funny. We're going to talk about another young man here, Sean, because, you talk about kids that just make plays. And maybe size doesn't, size is going to be a conversation that we're going to have with the next guy. But Jason Robinson, wide receiver out of Long Beach Poly. We're going to watch some sophomore film because his junior film is not quite as accessible. But, man, he had a dynamic junior campaign, Sean. So I've had a couple different articles about Jason Robinson here pretty recently because I had a nice sit down with him and his mother. 5'9", about 165 pounds right now. A player that has been a little bit of it's been a roller coaster of a recruiting process so far. Decommitted from USC a couple weeks ago, was committed to USC for over a year since he was a sophomore in high school. Has decommitted. Schools like Notre Dame, Oregon, there's a lot of schools that are high on Jason Robinson. And Jason took a step back, talked with his parents for, about a month and a half. And they kind of made a decision here, Sean, that, USC maybe was just the place he knew best, him being a Long Beach kid, Long Beach Poly out there in California. But maybe he needed to take an opportunity to really open his eyes and see everything that's out there. And I think Notre Dame is a big part of that conversation because Chancey Stuckey has done a great job in this one. I am told, and we put this on the Intel piece, and I think I put this I know I put it in one of the articles I wrote about him. He is going to take an official visit to Notre Dame. That is on the plans. So Notre Dame's in on this kid, man. There was obviously some hesitation for some kids as far as, from people around the program as far as the size goes. But seeing him in person and seeing the type of person and character and competitor that this kid is, Sean, they quieted those concerns very quickly about the size. This kid's just a good football player, man. And you see it all over this film. He's a little bit small, but really good body control, can make things happen after the catch. Pristine route runner, really can break off some routes. I mean, Sean, I'd be lying, man. I know that you mentioned him as well. I know we're both fans of Jason Robinson Jr., obviously.
You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of a guy that your quarterback is going to look to on third downs on a national championship team. Like, you can have all of the other big guys, that big tight end, but on third down, where's my inside guy? Where's my little guy that's going to run great routes, make great catches? Whether I throw it at the ground, he's going to go down to the ground, bring it in. He's going to throw it outside. He's going to find a way to bring it in. This is the type of receiver he is. If he needs to make a guy miss and get another 2 or 3 yards to get that the first down and convert, keep the drive going, he's going to do that as well. Tough as nails, even at his size, plays tough, and he can do a lot of things. He can do the jet sweeps. He can do the special teams and get you slot, big plays down the field, crossing routes. Like, whatever you need, he's going to be able to provide it. Even if you don't ask him to do it, if you get in a pinch and you need him to do it, he's going to be able to deliver. He's really one of my favorite players when I watch his film. I can't wait to see his junior film. But this is the sophomore film. I can't wait to see his junior film. Because you can just look. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, Sean, because I think someone made a good point about it in the chat. He's playing against really good competition, too. Like, I just want to throw that in there while you continue, right? Like, he's playing against some dudes out there in California.
Yeah. And fortunately, Malik Zaire gets a chance to coach against him and has coached against him. And Malik was the one that really put the stamp on it for me. Like, yo, if Notre Dame has a chance to get him, like, they need to get him because he's a game changer. And that's coming from Malik, who's coached against him. So,
yeah. And he's an interesting one too, Sean, because, I mean, you mentioned it, right? Like, he's kind of like that security blanket in the slot a little bit, but I actually think he could play outside too at like only 5'9". Like, he's, he reminds me of, I'm going to throw a comp out there and I want you to react. Here's a comp. He gives me Jahan Dotson vibes. Like, he gives me Jahan Dotson out of Penn State vibes. That's who I see.
I love that. Jahan Dotson, the guy, like you said, I remember when Jahan Dotson first started coming in, he was really more of a bag-up third, fourth guy in the wide receiver group, and he still would make plays. And then once he became the primary guy, I was like, okay. And he really didn't have an outstanding quarterback. Oh. But it didn't matter who they played. He made plays in big games. That's why I love this kid when I watch his film. The competition he goes up against. He's going to be prepared for the moment. He understands coming to Notre Dame and facing that national schedule. That translates. He gets it. So he comes in with the expectation of, I have to make plays. I have from the jump. Look at that. Once again, just his ability to catch the ball, laying all out. And you can see that the quarterbacks depend on him. Yes. Now, you can see that, like, he's a sophomore, but the quarterbacks are like, hey, that's the dude I want to go to. Look at him. Just the quarterback never took his eyes off of him. Led to underneath coverage right over to him and almost got it picked.
And Sean, the interesting part about him is, despite him being small, one of the things that takes you off guard is, like, he finishes through contact and kind of wins at the catch point a lot for a little guy. Like, he's just not that guy that's just a pure route runner. He's not a guy, like, he does a lot of different things, which is really interesting. And I've kind of been no, go ahead. You do your.
Oh, I was saying, just to back up what you're saying, if he can stay away from the little knick-knack injuries, right? Because he doesn't have a big hit area.
Yeah.
And you can see he knows how to go into areas of contact and wiggle, get small, get those extra yards, like you said.
Yep.
The only thing with size, of course, you worry about health, on the college level, and whether or not he can stay healthy. But I mean, that was the same concern that a guy like Devontae Smith had.
That's true. And it's not been an issue so far. It's not been an issue so far for him. You're very right. I mean, and again, he's a guy that, I mean, at the end of the day, kid just makes plays. Like, I mean, that's just all it comes down to. And he's really interesting too, Sean, because I've been talking about this for a couple months now. Because immediately people saw, he's a Long Beach kid that's committed to University of Southern California, right? Like, what interest is he going to have in Notre Dame? And I kept telling people, like, guys, I'm telling you, man, there's interest here. I'm telling you, there is. There's legitimate interest here. But I understand the skepticism, right? He's a Southern California kid going to USC and all that great stuff. And then you saw him on campus during the Boston College weekend, just digging the snow, man. Just loving it, Sean. You're like, oh, there might be something there, man. There might be something to him actually being a fit at Notre Dame, because I'll tell you all this from just speaking with him, throughout the last few months. He fits Notre Dame. He's a very self-driven kid, very smart, very intelligent, values education at a high level, not afraid to leave home. He's not afraid to leave Southern California. Not at all. And I'm here to tell you all, Notre Dame is going to be in this one until the very end, in my opinion. And you all owe that to this coaching staff, but more like specifically, Chancey Stuckey needs a lot of credit on this one. Getting in this one and making it legitimate. And Marcus Freeman, he also needs a lot of credit for this one. So they're moving the needle they're moving the needle right now with the Robinson family, Jason Robinson. So I expect him to take an official visit to Notre Dame. I expect Notre Dame to be in it until the very end. They also really like Notre Dame from the parent perspective. And Sean, it's also going to be interesting, man. You might be able to make a little bit of a pipeline with the Robinson boys, man, because I'll tell you what, Jaden Robinson, who's a 2025 wide receiver, also goes to Long Beach. Very talented, man. Might be a guy that Notre Dame needs to get on the radar with. I know he's already visited Notre Dame before. Doesn't currently hold an offer, but interesting player. And then Jason will tell you on the record, Sean, the most potential of any of the Robinson brothers is Skyler, who's an 8th grader, who apparently is going to be a dude down the line. So just telling you, man, the Robinson boys to South Bend would be a pretty nice little get. So Jason Robinson, wide receiver from Southern California, Long Beach Poly. Sean, next guy, another one of your guys, man. So I want to open this one up because this one's going to be fun. We got Mr. TJ Moore, who is a wide receiver out of Tampa Catholic in the state of Florida. We'll talk about his timeline and all that great stuff, things that we've gathered here, Sean. But another guy you wanted to bring to the table because you're pretty fond, it seems, of Mr. TJ Moore.
Yeah, he's number one for me out of the wide receiver group. I'll say that again. He's number one for me out of the wide receiver group.
You're saying? Are you saying nationally or just on Notre Dame's board?
No, just on Notre Dame's board, man. He has, in my opinion, he has the potential to have elite impact at the wide receiver position at Notre Dame. Like I'm not caught up on stars. I'm not caught up on stars rankings, man. I'm looking at film and seeing who can make an impact and who can be a dude. Yeah, this young man is a dude. I don't care where he goes. He's going to be a dude at the wide receiver position. And his film, his film is some of the most ridiculous things we've seen on junior film. You know it. He shows you everything. The ability to catch the ball down the field, the ability to break tackles. He catches the screens. He runs good routes. He catches the balls with his hands. He high points the ball. Red zone, blocking, whatever. Look at this. Out of backfield. Speed, easy speed.
By the way, 6'3", 6'4", and he's long. He's long, just to keep
works.
Reiterating that. Yeah. This is my favorite one right here, Sean. Watch this. Just so nonchalantly. Held the ball up. He held it up.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
And so we have a really good resource at the Irish Breakdown staff, Sean. We have Mr. Brian Smith, who of course covers the state of Florida, but he covers everything, man. He's on the road a ton a year. He has talked to TJ Moore, who's a hard kid to get in touch with. I'll put it that way. I don't think you're going to hear too much of him from the media perspective. There's going to be some questions about TJ's not in a rush. This recruiting process is just getting started for him. He might be a kid that takes it up into National Signing Day. I wouldn't be surprised. But Brian has continued to reiterate that he thinks that he is absolutely a Notre Dame fit. He thinks he fits from a personal perspective, quiet kid, from a academic perspective, values education. Obviously, he's an extremely talented football player. So we'll see if it fits. It's a question of where does Notre Dame have him on the pecking order of the wide receiver group? And, if there's a player that they find in a similar breath to him who wants to commit early in the season comparative to him maybe that wants to commit after the season. Like that's kind of where the board shakes up, right? So Tampa Bay Catholic high school wide receiver TJ Moore. I don't think there's any question that he's talented. When I saw his offer, Sean, I'm just like, that dude can go, man. He can go. Like there's something to that young man, right? So interesting player.
He's worth the wait, in my opinion. He's definitely worth the squeeze.
Juice is worth the squeeze?
Man, he's worth the squeeze. Like, I love Ryan Wingo. I love some of the top guys by ranking.
Yep.
But it's just something about this kid. He's special. He just is. And to get him would mean a lot. It would mean a lot. Because like you said, everybody is on him.
It's so funny, Sean. I remember when he got offered, and I think we talked about him on the show right after. There was somebody in the chat that was, like, oh, another 3-star for Notre Dame, another 3-star. You see, he just got his 4th star the other day. I'm just like, right. Yep, and it's gonna keep going forward, man. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, is this a hot take? If that kid ended up as a 5-star, would you be like shocked? I mean, I wouldn't be like totally shocked about it. I mean, maybe a little bit, but like,
not at all.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked at all, right? Just based upon if he's doing what he did in his junior year, I can only imagine what he's about to do to competition in his senior year.
Right. And a nice little note on him is that he is on a 7-on-7 team with CJ Carr, who is committed to Notre Dame in the 2024 class. Sean, can we talk about this?
Ryan,
Yes. Oh, something happened. I don't know what happened, Sean? What happened?
Don't tease me like that. Don't tease me like that, man.
Sean, you want to hear something even better? You ready for this? You know who else is on that team? On that team?
Oh, boy.
On one team, they have Mr. TJ Moore, they have Mr. Ryan Wingo, and they have Mr. Jeremiah McClellan on CJ Carr's 7-on-7 team. Sean's off the screen again. Sean, you got to come back, man. You got to come back.
Why? I
need the reaction.
This is the dead period. Don't get me this excited about the wide receiver position at Notre Dame.
Just saying, man. CJ's got a pretty good pitch. Like, hey, man, you see all these dots I'm throwing to you? You can play at Notre Dame, and I'll keep throwing you some dots, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, that's funny, man. That's funny. But all seriousness, man, TJ Moore's a really talented football player. We'll see how things move forward. Obviously, the emphasis over the next couple months, Sean, should be let's get TJ Moore to campus because that changes things sometimes for some players. So let's get him to campus. Another talented wide receiver. Let's talk about Sean, though, to end the wide receiver segment. Probably the fastest wide receiver that we'll talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the fastest wide receiver on Notre Dame's board in general. That's Mr. Josiah Brown, who is out of the state of New York. He goes to Trinity Catholic out in Hicksville, New York. I'll talk a little bit about some of his track times, Sean, as we enjoyed this young man's film, because he can fly. Okay. Being recruited by a lot of schools. Dropped the top 10. Georgia was on there. Penn State was on there. Notre Dame was on there. Some other, obviously, really highly accoladed schools were on there. A lot of schools have talked to him about defensive back. A lot of schools are talking about wide receiver. Josiah Brown's preference is the wide receiver position.
Okay, bookmark that last clip, that last play.
Go bookmark it?
Yeah. That last play, that's real speed.
Yeah.
What you saw in that last clip, that was real speed. When he made up the stagger on the defender, like it was nothing. Like, you know how you run the 200 and they come out of the corner And,
Yes.
you see guys make up the stagger. He made up the stagger or the room that the defender had. He thought he had via the angle. Yeah. Okay.
Sean, and for some track nerds out there, I don't know who else is a track nerd in here. I love track. He's a young man so in the outdoor section of track, he is a 100-meter, 200-meter guy. Sub 22 in the 200, pretty good 200-meter guy. He ran 10.76 in the 100 meters as a sophomore in high school. So I imagine him being more in the 10.5 range, probably as a junior this year. His specialty, though, is in the indoor. He runs 55 meters, and he is a 6.38 personal best in the 55-meter, Sean, which, for context, we all know Chris Tyree's fast, right?
Right.
Chris Tyree ran 6.34. So this kid is 400th of a second off of Chris Tyree. So he's in that ballpark, man. He is extremely fast. There's a reason that right now I would say that the top 3 schools for him, in my opinion, based upon conversations I have had, are Notre Dame, Penn State, and Georgia in no particular order. That's the top 3. There's a reason that Georgia is so high on this young man. This kid can go. Also, willing to play defensive back if that's what a school wants from him. But the preference right now is to play wide receiver, and then he obviously has the special teams upside, man. Sean, this kid's lightning, man. Lightning in a bottle. Athletic, fast, really well-spoken kid. If you stick around before our mailbag today, there might be an interview that might be fun to hear about. Maybe Josiah Brown might be a part of that interview. So he's good, man. He's a good football player. Will immediately be one of the fastest wide receivers on Notre Dame's team, maybe the fastest wide receiver on Notre Dame's team the minute he steps on campus if he does end up with Notre Dame. He's got that type of speed. This is a legit 4.4 easy athlete, maybe 4.3 kid once he fully develops into his body. That's what this kid is, in my opinion.
This is impressive, man, because he has football speed. He has elite football speed. There's a lot of people that run track that come onto the football field and don't necessarily play fast.
Yep.
He's a football player that runs track.
Yes.
From what I see.
And a cool note on him too, Sean. Obviously I was trying to tease it, but it wasn't a great tease. Josiah Brown joined me for an interview a couple days ago. We'll have that interview for you all here in a few minutes. But so his dad played football and basketball in college. His mom was a premier track athlete. His brother was a sensational lacrosse player that had 45 goals in one season and 9 goals in a single game in high school. His younger brother, he told me, might be the best athlete of the bunch, but obviously he's a little bit younger. And also he had another brother that was an all-state running back as well. So this kid comes from a extremely athletic family, extremely athletic. And I think you said it, man, easy speed. He's got the speed where he looks like he's not running hard. He just someone said he's floating. I mean, yeah, he's gliding. Like he has minimal effort as a runner, which is just incredible to watch, man. Really, really gifted football player. Great young man, too, by the way. So I'm excited to dive into him a little bit more, man, to talk about him because, I mean, Sean, that's the speed that Notre Dame needs. I mean, in the finest passing.
Yeah. No, go right ahead. I was mad.
I was just going to say, in the finest passing attacks that Notre Dame has had over the last 10 years or so, what was one thing that team particularly had? I think back to the Will Fuller days, right? Will Fuller had speed where he could make a single play and it completely bolster a passing attack and create it and just manufacture yardage. Like that's what Josiah Brown brings to the game. I'm not saying he's going to be Will Fuller if he ends up at Notre Dame. What I'm saying is that you need that dynamic element, man. If a passing game is struggling, it only takes one play. It only takes one play to get everything jump-started because of how talented this young man is. So, I'm just gushing a little bit, man, because I just really think he's a fantastic player. I really do.
Yo, he's the type of kid that you pay your $7 to $10 on a Friday night to go watch. I'm not going to watch the team. I'm going to watch him. I want to see what he does because he's going to do something tonight is going to make me say, wow, this kid is amazing. Like, he's box office. There's very few kids that are box office like that when you watch their film. And as soon as you told me about the speed aspect, and you're like, yo, he might be the fastest wide receiver on this board. I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. And first two highlights, like, okay. Float, easy speed, man, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And he's not, you're watching him, and he's not even at his peak athletic ability yet.
He's skinny, Sean.
He's skinny. He's a junior high school. He's
Yep.
going to get stronger.
Yep.
More powerful as a runner.
Yep. That's it, man. I mean, you said it. He is listed at 6'1", 170 something pounds. I don't think he's 6'1" to begin with. I think he's more in the 5'11 and a half range. That doesn't matter to me. I mean, it doesn't. But this kid is, to your point, Sean, he's going to get bigger, he's going to get stronger, and he's going to get faster. Like, that point blank period is what he is going to end up being. Like, there's a special traits to what this young man has to bring to the table. Dynamic deep speed, also has ability to play multiple positions, which matters. Like, that really does matter. So I'm interested to see how Josiah Brown, what the rest of the process looks like. Again, I think Notre Dame, Penn State, Georgia, those are the three, in my opinion, are at the top of the list. I don't think there's a particular hierarchy to those. I think that's what the next couple months is designed for. He's planning to get up to Notre Dame here over the next couple months. It's just about closing time here for those three schools. Because I don't think, I'll put it like this. I think Josiah Brown is incredibly thankful for the position he's in, but I don't think he's like, I love the recruiting process. I don't think that that's what it is for Josiah. I think that he is just very fortunate for where he is. So, yeah, really talented player, though, man. I'm excited about him, and we'll see what the next couple months hold for Josiah Brown. Let's get into our next guy, starting with a couple tight ends. We might actually hold off on Carter Nelson today because, I've talked about Carter Nelson enough, I think, for a few months. Let's talk about someone, Sean, that we haven't talked about much, and a guy that I know we're excited about as well. This is Jaden Riddell, who's out of the state of Missouri. 6'4", 6'5", 225 pounds, had a remarkable junior year. I think only 40-something receptions, but had over 1,000 yards. This kid is much more wide receiver than he is true tight end right now, similar to Carter Nelson in that regard. He needs to fill out, the body type is very, I think, advantageous to putting on a lot of weight, but he's a wide receiver right now, and he's big, he's fast. 4.41 speed, I think is what was reported by him. So he's a long, athletic pass catcher who has incredible straight line speed.
I'm sorry. You can't spread rumors like that, Ryan. Did you say 4.41? Is that what you said?
If that's the spreading of a rumor, that's on Jaden Riddell's Twitter page. So okay. I didn't start that rumor, man. Didn't start it.
He's a wide receiver, right? He's a wide receiver that runs 4.41. Okay.
So that's alleged, man. That's what allegedly.
Oh, I thought he was a tight end. I'm not sure. I don't know.
I mean, Sean, you see most of his work's at outside receiver, man. Yeah, I haven't seen him in the line much yet, but my guy's long and he can run. I could work with that. I could work with that type of speed. See, he's got a nice little catch radius as well, too. When he gets up and he extends and plucks the football, it's not a nice receiver traits to work with there, man. There he hurdles someone, breaks another tackle, breaks another tackle. They can't get him down in bounds. A kid that I know for certain, Notre Dame is very high on Jaden Riddell. They are. We've talked about that top group of Carter Nelson, Jaden Riddell, and Walter Matthews, Sean. I think that's kind of become more of a two-horse race at this point. I think that this is a Jaden Riddell, Carter Nelson conversation. Walter Matthews, I think, has interest in Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame has interest in him. I just don't think it's enough. I just don't think it's enough. But these two kids, I know Carter Nelson has interest in Notre Dame. No, he does. Jaden Riddell obviously also looks like he has interest in Notre Dame as well. So these are the two guys, man. These are two cats, I believe, that are going to be in that conversation for the second tight end in Notre Dame's class because they have obviously Jack Larson committed. But this young man, along with Carter Nelson, they bring something different than what Jack has. Yeah. Jack is more 6'3", nice mover, kind of, short to intermediate type of player. These young men, Nelson and Riddell, are those long striders that can really win above the rim, that can really stretch the field vertically. Like, that's what Jaden Riddell is to me. Catching the comeback there near the sideline. Looks good, man. Looks good. Obviously, the question, Sean, is going to be, how much weight are you going to put on his frame? How high can you get that number up? And can he block? I don't know if he can block. I've never seen him do it. But he can catch the football. He can catch the football, though.
Oh, man. Are you kidding me? Look, there must be a new mold that God is using when it comes to these young high school football players because the combination of speed and size that we're seeing with Riddell and Carter Nelson and what they're able to do with that size and how they run so effortlessly. And they're just not your traditional tight ends. And you know what? I know they took Jack Larson early.
Mm-hmm.
But if you sat Jack Larson, Riddell, and Carter Nelson on a table, and you said I can only take two, I wouldn't debate against someone that possibly left Jack Larson on the table.
And I also wouldn't blame anybody that said, you know what? Let's take all three.
At all. Well, we pushed for that, though. Remember, we were pushing for that.
We
pushed for that to take three in the class. Like, when you have talent like this at the position, why not?
And it's not obviously super likely that you take three tight ends in one class, but if you got a commitment from either Riddell or Carter Nelson in the somewhat near future, and the other one was like, nah, I still want to come compete, I'd be like, all right, sounds good. Come on down, man. Come on down. But you're right, Sean. I mean, these kids nowadays, man, and obviously I'll see a little bit of that in Indianapolis this week. Like, these guys just don't look like they were born on this earth.
No.
These kids are just getting so much more athletic, man. Yeah. Just so much bigger, so much more athletic. It's wild. It's absolute wild.
I think the one thing to think about is in taking all three, what you do is you give yourself an opportunity for, in my opinion, is a year after this year, because I think Bauman is gone after this year. I think Mitchell Evans has another year. But you have Holden stays. You have Eli Raridan worried about his injury. You have Cooper Flanagan.
Yeah.
If they emerge, you have to worry about a guy like Mitchell Evans saying, maybe I need to go be the number one somewhere else. It's going to be interesting to see how this tight end room evolves over the next 2 years, specifically in recruiting. But you know what? The offensive coordinator is the guy that was recruiting these guys.
That's true.
So if anyone's going to push to get three in the class, it's good to have the offensive coordinator in your corner. That, for me, that bodes well. Because if he sits down and says, look, I can get Riddell and Carter Nelson, it definitely works well in their recruiting.
Yes.
Because now the guy recruiting you is the offensive coordinator. Pretty safe that he's going to get you the ball when you show up on campus.
And I have spoken to Carter Nelson's family about that too, Sean, because obviously they love big admiration for Coach Parker and the impact he's had in a short amount of time. I do think that will help in that recruitment as well. So I think Carter Nelson is going to be a Notre Dame Nebraska battle at the end of the day, because I just think he's a small school kid. I just think that that's where he wants to be. I mean, Alabama's come in, Georgia's come in, all the SECs come in, but I do think that it's going to be a battle between the Midwestern schools for Carter Nelson. So that's just kind of my pulse.
It might end up being CJ versus Rayola, right?
It could be. We'll see. But I will say this: the Nelsons. the vibe I get is that they're not like super recruiting people. Like, they're just small town people, right? Like they just want to find the right fit and get this over with. I don't think the flashy lights really matter to them. And so we'll see. But a couple talented tight ends obviously on the board, Jaden Riddell and Carter Nelson. Sean, last guy I wanted to talk about before we get into the Josiah Brown interview. Got to throw some offensive linemen some love here, Sean, if that's who you want to call this young man. I mean, if we're going to watch film of a young man playing tight ends more than offensive line, but this is Mr. Carter Nelson. This is Mr. I'm losing my mind. Caleb Brewer out of Wyomissing High School in Pennsylvania, who we've talked about a ton here, Sean. 6'5", 300 pounds, played tight end for the team. They ran a lot of like wing T variables in this offense, so they needed him from his blocking down perspective. But a really gifted athlete that I think Caleb Brewer has all the traits to be a really talented offensive tackle at the next level. If not, he's going to be a dynamic interior offensive lineman. There's no doubt in the world. But Sean, you see that right there, man? You see that? Get some movement in the run game, man. Absolute movement. Was also on the same offensive line as Williams. First name is escaping me for a second, but he's going to Penn State. Was a really Javen Williams, excuse me, who's going to Penn State. And I think ultimately this is going to be a Penn State Notre Dame thing. I think Notre Dame has a really good chance though with Caleb Brewer. I honestly do. He's a very talented football player.
Real talk. We did his initial film review, so I decided to show his film to Malik, and Malik watched him and said, "Quentin."
No, did he?
No lies.
Yeah.
He just watched him, dude. When I watch Caleb Brewer, he reminds me. Have you ever seen that film of Andy Reid when he did the punt kick pass contest?
Yes.
He was the biggest. Caleb Brewer like just towers over everybody else on the field like Andy Reid did that night. It is just insane, especially when he's running across the middle with his hand up as a pass catcher. It's like, who wants to hit that? Who?
So it's wild too, man. Top 5 in his state in the heavyweight for wrestling as well. He's a dominant wrestler at his level. Played last year at 6'5", about 295 pounds in football. Obviously had to get his weight down to the 285, and then he got a 2-pound allowance after December. So he's wrestling at 287 pounds right now. But his goal and his body is going to allow him most likely to play around 315 pounds as a senior. Like, he's getting bigger, man. He's getting bigger, which is – this kid could legitimately be 6'5 and a half, 6'6", 320 pounds. Like, he's going to be that type of dude, in my opinion.
Dude, this is legit one of my favorite films to watch.
It's comical, man.
It's comical. 24 class. It goes back to what we just said about the template that's being used now. By God, like what is going on? Like, I never saw kids like this when I was playing high school sports and going to high school football games. Look at him running through. Who? Look at the safety. Like, who? Did you see the safety move? Yeah. Safety just moved out of the way. Like, I'm not touching that.
I don't blame that safety at all. If I was his coach, I'd be like, I understand why you didn't do that. Why you did that. I get it, man. Man.
Oh man.
I'm telling you, man.
How do you think the new O-line coach, whomever it is, when they start looking at the film of the guys that are already on the board, how do you think he's going to feel when he watches? Well, I think when you interviewed him, he said he had an offer from B-Tech, right?
He did have an offer. Yeah, I think he does have an offer.
He had an offer from B-Tech. So, yeah, if it indeed is Joe Rudolph, he's already familiar, which bodes well. He's already familiar with the coach.
Yep. And again, man, I don't want to talk about him too much because I know people think I just have like a fandom for Caleb Brewer. But I mean, Sean, I just think that he has all the makings of being excellent at the next level. Like, I really do. I mean, everything that offensive line coaches value, he has. He has a size profile. He has athleticism. He has strength. He has a wrestling background. All those things matter. He also plays defense, which I think helps him a lot as well. So I think he's an offensive tackle at the next level. There's going to be some people that are like, oh, he's probably more of a guard. My answer is I don't care. Like I don't care where he plays. Like he's dominant, man. Just be dominant football player.
And I think
like,
that's what Malik was pointing to. Like, if they want him to tackle, fine, but he probably can be an all-world.
Yes,
he's already a grappler. He'd probably be an all-world guard on the interior.
No doubt. So whether he ends up as a left tackle, right tackle, in offense, that's the crazy thing, Sean, is that I think there is a pathway that he can play all 5 spots at the next level. Like that there's a pathway, which is just wild. Because I think he could be a really good center too if he wanted to. Like he could, but I mean, so that's kind of our favorite list for the offensive side of the football. We'll do defensive recruits next week. As far as the 2024 kids are concerned, we're going to get into an interview here in a second before we hit the mailbag. So keep throwing those mailbags in the chat. I have been, I've been hitting on the stars and getting those all ready to go. But that's going to kind of be our little bit of a breakdown here of some of our favorite 2024 offensive recruits. Before we get into the interview with Josiah Brown, star wide receiver out of Trinity Catholic in Hicksville, New York, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the podcast, share, hit that notification bell. Boris at IrishBreakdown.com. We got great intel pieces on not only the potential offensive line coach hire for Notre Dame, but a great recruiting feature that came out earlier in the day. But that is going to do it for this portion of the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. All right, Sean. So we talked about a little bit about him in the first section of this podcast. We have Josiah Brown, wide receiver out of Hicksville, New York. He is a 2024 wide receiver out of Trinity Catholic. We want to give you all a little bit of insight because he's a talented player, obviously, that you looked at, dynamic deep speed, playmaking ability. And he's a really good football player, but a really good person as well. So without further ado, here's my previous interview with Josiah Brown. If it would come up, that would be great. It's coming. Irish Breakdown podcast, bringing you another exclusive interview. It is recruiting hour on a Monday afternoon, technically. And I want to give you all a little bit of insight into some of the top targets that are on the board for Notre Dame in the 2024 class, players that they are making true priorities to hopefully land at some point in the class. So I have Josiah Brown joining me today, who's a New York guy out of Holy Trinity. If you haven't seen Josiah, just like a brief background of him, he plays wide receiver for his team. He plays defensive back. There's been schools that I know have been heavily recruiting him on both sides of the ball. He's also a prominent track athlete who brings a lot of big time speed to the table. So Josiah, I know it's a little bit of the off season, man. We're in a dead period right now, but just how's everything been recently, man? Since since the season ended for you.
Everything's been going well. Just taking my time with the recruitment, also been working on getting bigger, even faster. So that's where I'm at right now.
I love it, man. I love it. Josiah, I have to ask, man, because I know for a few weeks there, it was like hustle and bustle. Coaches are coming in to see you. They're all asking, like, when are you going to come up to the campus? When are you going to take the visits? It has to feel a little nice, I would assume, just to kind of have this little dead period, a little bit of downtime, just kind of relax a little bit, I would think.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's a blessing to be in this position I am in. But in this dead period, I'm just taking my time, really looking at what schools I need to head up to and just taking everything in.
Yeah, man. No doubt. And I know it's obviously been very hectic off season for you. Like I said, I mean, you're over 20 offers at this point. There's been some big time schools that have been after you. I know you recently dropped the top 10, which Notre Dame was a part of. So I guess, Josiah, if you could just kind of, categorize your recruitment so far. I know you said that you just feel blessed and grateful, obviously, for the opportunity, but, just how has everything been in general from the recruiting side, the attention you're getting and just kind of, feeling out the process a little bit?
Honestly, it's been a great feeling, It really helps with time management, though. That's one thing I'll put out there. Managing, talking to coaches with your social life, your academic and football life, like, It's really prepares you for life. I feel like being recruited how I am.
Yeah. And I know one of the cool visits I know you just had, and I would love to hear just a little bit about it. I know I messaged you about it after you got back, but I know you got up to Penn State, which I know was a great campus, great environment. Can you just give us a little insight into, just kind of that visit? Happy Valley is a place that I have never unfortunately been, but I've heard amazing things about it, obviously.
Yeah, the campus is beautiful. Coaches really welcome me and my family with open arms. I know they have a really good academic program over there. Obviously, good football program too. Um, but the visit was very nice.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, Josiah, because obviously you have schools from all over the country that are kind of recruiting you. You know, you have some SEC schools, you have the Northern Powers, and everything in between. I know that originally Notre Dame was actually recruiting you on the defensive side of the ball, and then obviously now the target is for you to play wide receiver. Has that been kind of a mixture for you? I'm just curious on like the teams that are really recruiting you hard. Is it strictly on offense now? Is it a mix? Is it an opportunity to play both? Like, what's kind of the gauge from a position perspective?
Honestly, position perspective, coaches are asking me what my preference is. My current preference is receiver, but I love playing defense. Like if I end up being a DB, like I wouldn't have a problem with it. Some coaches want to get me in the return game as well. Just be an athlete, wherever I'm put, I'm just gonna excel.
Yeah. Well, and let me ask you where this athleticism come, man. I would love to just hear a little bit maybe about the family background. Do you come from an athletic family? Or are you kind of an outlier to that family? Like just kind of a little bit of your family dynamic, if you don't mind.
Yeah, my family we're pretty athletic. You could say that. Let me give you some background. My
Yeah.
dad, my dad was a really good football player, basketball player, played in college. My mom was a really fast track athlete, extremely fast. My older brother, he played lacrosse. He had 45 goals in a season, 9 in a game. My second oldest brother, he was an all-state running back. My younger brother, he's up and coming. He's gonna be good. I think he's gonna be better than all of us. Yeah.
Wow. That's wild. So, I mean, your parents, then, you got the best of both worlds there, then, man, right? You got the football and you got the track from mom, which is pretty insane. I mean, well, let me ask you about Josiah, because that's interesting, right? I mean, so your family has played a lot of different sports. You mentioned lacrosse, you mentioned track, you mentioned football. Growing up, did you always gravitate towards football and track? Were there other sports you played? Like, what's kind of your background, I guess?
I don't know, like growing up watching them, I was just like pretty like decent at everything. But the reason how I started playing football was through track.
Hmm.
So it's a funny story, right? So my friend is running at his track practice, CYO, we're like really young. And I raced him, and then his coach on the track team recruited me to run track. I had never did a sport before, right? And then my future football coach was on that track staff, and he recruited me, and that's how I got into football. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And for people that don't understand track and field times, well, I coached track for a long time, so I appreciate that. You know, you ran a 10.76 in the 100-meter dash in outdoor track as a sophomore. I know you specialize in the 55-meter in the indoor, and I think you ran 6.38, if I remember, was your official time there. At least your FAT time I saw was the best. Talk to me about how that helps, man. Because I know a lot of people, there's like a debate a little bit, right? Like some people say, like, I just need to specialize in one sport. I'm an advocate for playing multiple sports and being kind of a well-rounded type of athlete. How much do you think kind of playing multiple sports maybe helps you as a football player or just an athlete in general?
Honestly, playing different sports, like it really boosts your athleticism because, for instance, in track, like especially in the 55, you gotta be real explosive. You gotta get out. You gotta hold that, but not as long. Just like a football play, average football play is like what 3 seconds, 4 seconds.
Yep.
5 is like 6 seconds, right? So it really helps carry on to the football world, like that explosiveness. That's what I'll say about track.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And again, that 6.38 is a really good time in 55-meter, and just so people kind of understand that context a little bit. And I know you're obviously in the indoor season right now and steadily training and everything. Is there something over the last couple years? Because like I look at you as kind of a natural in the football field. I mean, I'm watching you work in the screen game. I'm watching you play defense. I'm watching you return a punt for a touchdown. Like you just make everything kind of look very easy, which, you know, for some people is like frustrating because you're like, I wish I could have done that when I played, but I wasn't unfortunately as athletic as obviously you were. Right. But, you know, kind of looking at just your background a little bit and, you know, kind of everything you do on a football field. I guess my encompassing question is just, what does it mean to you as a player on your team for Holy Trinity to be a guy that is counted on to do so many different things and help your team win in a multitude of ways?
Well, I'm gonna use this blessing word again. It feels like another blessing, being that leader for them. Like I want to like have them follow my steps, like be able to make big plays, showing them what to do in the classroom and even like outside of the classroom, just in daily life things. But when we're talking about the football standpoint, it feels good, making those big plays and then seeing in the crowd like everybody's going crazy. It's every football player's dream.
Yeah. And is it surreal for you a little bit? Because I know you're still a junior technically, right? You still have the second half of the school year to finish up here. But I mean, man, before you blink an eye, you're gonna be in summer workouts and about to start the fall, and you're gonna be a senior, man. Has that hit you yet at all, or are you still trying to just kind of take that one day at a time?
It actually has, to be honest with you. I usually think ahead, right? What could possibly happen in the future. And I was like, dang, like all this hard work ever since I was like a little kid. Now I'm about to graduate and go off to college. So
it's wild, man. It happens so quick, man. It's like a blink of an eye. Are you planning on, I don't know if you've figured this out yet, but are you planning on early enrolling? Or are you going to be a summer guy? Like any idea on that?
I don't have that answer for you as yet.
Gotcha. Okay. No worries at all, man. Well, let me talk just a little bit about the recruiting side. Because like I said, you dropped the top 10. I mean, for people that haven't seen that top 10, I mean, there are some impressive teams on there. I mean, I mentioned Penn State already, mentioned Notre Dame. I think Georgia was on that list, if I remember correctly, right? So you had, I mean, all the way up, from the northern schools all the way down, obviously, the SEC country, you were loaded up. How difficult was it for you, Josiah, just to kind of narrow that down a little bit? Because like I said before, a lot of great schools recruiting you. I know it's difficult to kind of narrow things down, but it's an unfortunate evil that you have to do, right, to try to find that best fit.
Honestly, I felt it was pretty hard, because those schools took their time out of like they believed in me,
Yes.
Like to just tell them like, oh, I'll be focused on these 10 other schools. It kind of hurt a little bit because they believed in me and they actually changed my life in a drastic way. They gave me an opportunity to play at the school, which was also great. But my recruitment is also 100% open, and I had sent out a message to let them know. Thank them, of course.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious about this because it sounds like you have a really kind of close-knit family, obviously a family of athletes. And I mean, your dad played football in college, you said, right? So like he's been through a little bit of this process. So how much has your family just been a help for you as kind of like a support system to be able to help you kind of ease through so many difficult decisions that you have to make moving forward?
Yeah, I'm really close to my family, I really love these guys. So they help me keep a level head on, but I know they'll have my back through whatever happens, so I always depend on them.
Yeah. So any idea if, any visits you're taking over the next few months? Like I'm just kind of forecasting besides obviously, finishing up the indoor track season, what does the next few months look like for Josiah Brown?
Ooh, I'm definitely planning visits. Got to work out those dates,
Yep.
Still going to be in the weight room, still going to be getting fast, still doing really good in the classroom. That's what I'll say the next couple of months will probably look like.
And before I ask you just about obviously the relationship between you and Notre Dame specifically for the podcast sake, let me ask you just, because I know we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but if I had to ask you, what are a few things that are like paramount for you to have when you make your college decision? Like when you settle on a school, this school needs to provide this, it needs to have this. Like what are some of the criteria you have for making that decision?
Okay, so I want to make it like I need to know like I'm going to be good away from home. Like it has to be another home. Definitely the academic standpoint, my major. I want to make sure like when I'm done with playing football, because like that's a realistic thing. Like you're not going to play football forever, so I want to make sure I have good education. Number 3, I would say the culture. Like, what is the culture like over there? Like, how do players respond to the coaches? What are the relationships like? I'll say those are 3 major things.
And any idea what you're planning on majoring in college, or are you still kind of figuring that part out?
I'm thinking about doing business or sports medicine.
Nice. Awesome, man. So let me ask you a little bit about Notre Dame then, because I know that This is one I was looking back at. I think the first time we had ever messaged back and forth, it was after you had just visited the campus and you've been offered, obviously. And I know you talked a lot about the coaches' relationships you had at that point with like Coach Stuckey. And I think you mentioned Marcus Freeman as well in that initial interview. Can you just talk to me a little bit about your relationship with Notre Dame at this point and just maybe a couple things that stand out about them?
We have a pretty good relationship. They all have like very like leader personalities. Like they're gonna make sure like you're good, not just playing football, but outside of that. They're really cool people, you know. Hard workers, definitely. Very great recruiters too. It's a really good coaching staff.
Yeah. And I think that last visit, if I remember correctly, I think it was like June 26th. I think you were up there, if I remember correctly. What was it like? Because I think that was your first time on campus. So what was it like just being in South Bend the first time and just maybe your initial impressions of being on campus?
Oh, the campus was beautiful. You know, there's some very beautiful trees out there. You know, campus was decent size. It was just a great visit for me and my family.
And did you have any timeline kind of set, Josiah? Like, is this one where you like want to make a decision before the school year? Do you want to take it up into the end of your senior year? Like, kind of timeline wise, any idea?
Not as yet. Still working that out.
Gotcha. And then my last question for you, man. Again, I really appreciate the time. Whether it's Notre Dame or somebody else in your top 10 or somebody else entirely, what could they expect from you as far as what you bring to the program as a person, as a football player? Like, what are just some things they should know about Josiah Brown? Like, if they if they do get the ability to have you be an asset to their program.
I'm gonna work hard. I'm also gonna try to lead the team. You know, I'm gonna go after that. Like, I'm gonna lead once I get wherever I end up. I'm gonna make sure everybody's good academically too. Like, I feel like that's really big. Like, you gotta have that one teammate in your ear. Like, come on, bro, you gotta make sure you're doing good. It's bigger than football. That's those are the main things I would say.
Love it, man. Love it. As you all can hear, Josiah Brown, star athlete, modest, fantastic football player, though, and a great young man. So Josiah Brown here, Holy Trinity High School up there in Hicksville, New York. Josiah, I really appreciate this again, man. This was fantastic. I love getting a little bit of the background, a little bit of the insight, man. And, I know we'll be in touch, but thank you again so much for joining the Irish Breakdown podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me.
All right, Sean, there it is, our interview with Mr. Josiah Brown, star wide receiver out of state of New York, Hicksville, New York, to be specific, Trinity Catholic. Sean, hard not to root for that kid, man. He's a really talented young man, obviously, really talented football player. But I think you hear it, and it's just my poll, Sean, and I would love to hear, your opinion as well as we kind of transition into the mailbag here in a second. He gives me Notre Dame person vibes, right? Like, even outside of just like football player. Yeah, of course he can fit it with the football team. He's fast, he's athletic, all that great stuff. But maturity beyond his age, I mean, that kid is a high school junior, and I was like kind of like sitting back like, wow, this kid speaks incredibly well for a junior in high school. Like, it's wild, and business, sports management. He kind of has it all together, man. So I was really impressed by Josiah Brown.
When you hear kids talking about they want to go into business, I tell young people all the time, I'm like, yo, I don't know about you, but I tell the story of how, I took all the AP classes and stuff when I was in high school, right? So I go into college. And my first semester, first semester, I'm taking like statistics and like math 125, which is business calculus. And all of my friends are taking introductory algebra. I'm like, wait a minute. And they're like, yo, you took the recommendation of your counselor. You didn't have to. You could have chosen to take this class and ease your way into things. But, to hear young men like Josiah having their mind set up on what they want to do already and attack, the Mendoza Business School, which is one of the top business schools in the nation, that shows you the confidence that they have at that young age on and off the field. Just an incredible young man, comes from an incredible family, incredibly athletic family, but also an incredible all-around family. And it shows. It shows when you hear the young man speak about what he wants.
Yeah, I mean, just a very he's very grounded, Sean. Like he's just very I could tell without even knowing his family very well that he comes from a great family. Like you could just tell, like he just has it all together. He has a thorough plan. Really a big fan of him, man. Really am. So we're gonna get to the mailbag here in a second. Again, if you want to start throwing some questions in there, I forgot, my bad, to go through earlier today. Brian Driscoll put out a article, Sean, that was kind of similar to our first portion of the podcast. I'm putting it in the chat right now for people that didn't get a chance to read it. He put out his favorites in the 2024 recruiting class on the Notre Dame offensive board. And I just want to kind of highlight a few of the players that he wanted to talk about, right? Because obviously he wasn't able to be with us today. Kedron Young, running back out of Texas, was one. Brian said about Kedron, Notre Dame is looking for a second back in the 2024 class, and there are two players that impress me above the rest. Young is the first, and I love his combination of size and speed. He's a power back with a great build, but he's also an athletic back. Young has tremendous balance and vision, but his power and speed is what makes him so much fun to watch. Young has a game that is similar to Audric Estime, but he's not quite as big, and he has better speed. Young is a top 100 caliber back on the Irish Breakdown board, which makes him vastly underrated. Another guy, Sean, that we haven't talked about at all, and kind of an interesting player that we just became aware of pretty recently, it's a young man named Peyton Lewis, who's a running back out of Salem, Virginia, who Brian highlighted on the board here, or on his article, I should say. Not a player that currently holds an offer from Notre Dame, but a player that we have heard Notre Dame values quite a bunch, and I wouldn't be surprised if he had an offer in the future. Brian said about Peyton Lewis, how can I do a list of favorite players and not have someone from Virginia? Lewis is an incredibly underrated back, but his film is quite impressive. The Salem, Virginia high school standout has game-changing speed, and his 55-meter indoor track times are very, very close to those of Chris Tyree as a high school player. Lewis shows that speed on film, but he's more than just a burner. He shows good vision, his balance is top-notch, and he's stronger than you'd expect at his size, but ultimately it's his elite speed that stands out above other traits. So that is Peyton Lewis, running back out of Virginia, that Notre Dame fans should have their eyes on as a potential offer down the road. Jason Robinson, a kid that we hit on during the first section of the podcast. Brian wrote about Jason, wide receiver out of Cal Poly. If Robinson was a legit 6 foot, 180 pounds, he would be a 5-star player. Robinson has truly outstanding skills, but he's just small. He's one of the more dynamic wideouts in the class, and his game is unique. Robinson is built like a slot receiver, but he has the game of an outside player. He has elite speed, no doubt, but his foot quickness and ability to change direction is truly special. Robinson is an outstanding route runner. He's hard to get hands on, and his ball skills are tremendous. Robinson is one of the more natural wideouts in the class. Also, another player, Sean, that we haven't talked about, that I would love to hear your insight on as I kind of read Brian's excerpt, if you've taken a look at him. Micah Gilbert, who's a wide receiver out of the state of North Carolina, younger brother of Mark Gilbert that played cornerback out of Duke. Brian had this to say about Micah Gilbert, who was offered a few weeks ago by the staff. Gilbert is without question one of my favorite wideouts in the class. Notre Dame targets or not, he's incredibly underrated in my view, and his game reminds me of a great deal of former Irish star Michael Floyd. Gilbert has very good size, and he's surprisingly nimble. His ability to quickly get into and out of the breaks and his feel for the game make him a strong route runner, and Gilbert has deceptive speed. He is a very strong receiver with big-time ball skills, and he's surprisingly good after the catch. So Brian has a few other guys on this list as well. Sean, I don't want to hit all of them too much because I want people to read that article that I put in the chat, right? But he talks about Josiah Brown, who we just heard the interview from. He talks about Quasi Gilmer, who's a wide receiver out of California. He talks about Jaden Riddell, who we talked about as a tight end out of the state of Missouri. Talks about Carter Nelson, Nebraska tight end that we talked about a little bit in the first section of this podcast. Caleb Brewer, who's an offensive lineman out of Pennsylvania that we talked about in the first section of the podcast. And he also talked about Liam Andrews, who's an offensive lineman up in the New England area that is also on the board for Notre Dame. So make sure to go check out that piece by Brian wrote. Brian did a tremendous job, I think, highlighting some of the more intriguing players in the class. So please make sure to go check that out. Again, I'm going to put that in the chat one more time. And I think it's a good mention, especially since Josiah Brown is in that section as well. So, Sean, that's going to do it for this section of the podcast. A little Josiah Brown talk, a little conversation with him, as well as a little bit of insight into Brian Driscoll's recent top favorite 2024 Notre Dame recruits on the offensive side of the ball. We're going to get in the mailbag next. Before we do, if you can hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell. Make sure to share everything we do here at irishbreakdown.com. You can also go to irishbreakdown.com if you just want some free content, some of the great articles that we're putting on daily. You can also go to boards.irishbreakdown.com if you want some of the recent intel features that we continue to put up on the message board. Really appreciate you all so much of the support we get. But that's going to end this section of the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. All right, Sean, we have a bunch of questions, and we need to get through them relatively quickly. So I want to start us off here, Sean, because we talked about this earlier. There's obviously some rumors out there that Rudolph might be the next offensive line coach at the University of Notre Dame. We have already reported, and it's on the premium message board at irishbreakdown.com, that is a little bit of a jumping of the gun. There's definitely high interest. There's no doubt about that. Like, no one would dispute that at all. But he has not interviewed for the job, obviously, at Notre Dame. He is set to interview tomorrow, Tuesday, if you're listening to this podcast currently. If things go well, we do anticipate it moving in that direction and him potentially being the main target on the board. But obviously, that interview process still needs to happen. So we had a question here, Sean, from Michael Parks. He said, can Joe Rudolph recruit elite talents? So, Sean, I actually brought up to start the conversation, I brought up a little bit of Joe Rudolph's past as a recruiter, and I'm going to name off some of the players and just kind of their rankings where they were, and this is all according to the 247 consensus rankings. So this kind of takes all the rankings into conversation. He has recruited Nolan Rucci, and this is mostly during his career, because he's most recently obviously at Virginia Tech, but this is during his career mostly at the University of Wisconsin. Nolan Rucci was a 5-star recruit that he pulled, number 16 overall out of the state of Pennsylvania. You also got Logan Brown, another 5-star, number 17 overall player in his class out of the state of Michigan. When he was at Pitt, Sean, he actually got he was the primary recruiter for Rochelle Shell, who was a running back that played at the University of Pittsburgh, was number 32 overall player and a 5-star. Also signed Dorian Johnson while he was at Pittsburgh, was number 44 player in his class. Trey Wedig, who was at Wisconsin, was the number 83 player in his class. Joe Bruner, who was, Notre Dame fans might remember, I believe was recruited by Notre Dame as well, was number 85 player in his class out of the state of Wisconsin. He also recruited Chris Clark at the tight end out of Connecticut, who was number 85 player in his class. Jack Nelson was number 104 player in his class, offensive tackle, who currently starts for the University of Wisconsin. Ben Schwal, who is a former starting offensive lineman for Wisconsin. Cole Van Lanen was a starting offensive lineman for the University of Wisconsin. Also, Garrett Rand, who's a starting defensive tackle for the University of Wisconsin. Caden Lyles, who started at Wisconsin as well, was a talented football player. Joe Tippmann was a recruit by Joe Rudolph, who was probably going to be a top 64 pick in this year's NFL draft, was a starting center for Wisconsin over the last couple of years. So, Sean, just based upon the data in front of me and the players that he's been able to sign, Tyler Beach, Barrett Nelson, down the list, there's even some like lower ranked guys, Logan Bruss, who ended up being a really good player for Wisconsin. That was a 3rd-round draft pick last year of the Los Angeles Rams. I think the easy answer for me, Sean, and I would love to get your insight on this, can he recruit? Yes, he can recruit. He's had a great history of recruiting some highly touted offensive linemen. He's done that in his career.
I would agree with that. Solid. My question would be, does he have any home runs in his recruitment? Yeah. Right? Because you're stepping. The reason I say that, because you're stepping into some shoes left by your predecessor, where his resume is, whether it's recruiting or development, his resume for that position speaks for itself. He can rest on his laurels and never do anything else at Notre Dame again, which I don't think he will, and pretty much say, look at my track record. They play on They currently play on Sundays, and they're among the best. Coming in from Wisconsin, I think he will have greater resources. So I think he's a really good recruiter. I think the resources behind him at Notre Dame and the brand of Notre Dame are going to make him even better as a recruiter. And so I think he'll go after some guys that maybe he would have never gone after at Wisconsin, at Notre Dame, which is going to make his profile better. But just based upon what you're saying, I have more belief in his ability to coach and develop. I'll wait and see who he is as a recruiter.
Right.
I'm confident about him as a coach and developer of talent. We'll wait and see how he puts these classes together along the offensive line moving forward.
And he's obviously he has developed some good offensive lines during his time. I mean, there was some good offensive lines in Wisconsin. You think about like Jonathan Taylor was able to do there. I mean, that was Joe Rudolph was the offensive line coach obviously for Wisconsin. He was at Pittsburgh when they had James Conner, who was a fantastic running back, who I know unfortunately his college career got derailed slightly. I mean, not slightly. He got derailed, fighting against Hodgkin's lymphoma. But I mean, before he got the diagnosis, he was a dominant player. And then he came back and had a nice season as well to end his career. So they've had some successful offensive lines. They have, what is the high long-term impact, the upside of him? I don't know. If he's the guy at Notre Dame, I'm not sure. I'm going to wait and see. But I think to the question just about recruiting, he's recruited some top guys. He has. And I think that Brian said this, Sean, and I think you maybe have said it as well in the past. You don't have to be a great recruiter to recruit good offensive linemen at Notre Dame. You don't have to. I mean, it's a relatively easy sell. So I'm more worried about, can Joe Rudolph develop elite talents? That's more important to me, because there's never going to be a talent issue at Notre Dame on the offensive line. Never going to be that.
I think the problem with the offensive line struggles in between Harry Hiestand, both his tenures at Notre Dame, in my opinion, was about going to the portal. I'll be honest. Going to the portal, going to get Kane Madden, when you could have just plugged a young player in there and just let him struggle and get better. Like, why go get a veteran that's not familiar with the system? Go get him, plug him in, and let him be at a deficit for the line the entire year, when a young player could have done that and you could have added value to him moving forward for the offensive line. That's my struggle. I thought Joe Alt was identified and developed and brought along as a young player before Harry Hiestand. Blake Fisher was the same way, identified, recruited. So other guys have shown that they can recruit big-time offensive linemen at Notre Dame. Like, Harry Hiestand does not have the monopoly on getting good players at Notre Dame at the O-line position. So, I feel good about the hire because Marcus Freeman identified this guy as the guy that fits on their staff and what they want. Now we just need to worry about development. That's because we have two studs that are possibly leaving after this season. I mean, I say real possibility that next year this time, Ryan, you're going to look at them work out in Indianapolis. It's really possible. Yeah. That's a year away.
And so at least one for sure.
Exactly. And now you look at what's behind that. Youth. They're the leaders, and they're going into their junior years. So it's a ton of young players behind them. And so this hire for me is very much essential as the combination of Jared Parker and Gino Guidugli. Yeah. Right? Because Gino Guidugli was an investment in the quarterback room. Not Sam Hartman, but the other guys.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing with me. Like, if he indeed is the hire, this is an investment in those young men that are behind Blake Fisher and Joe Alt. because he has to coach those guys. But it's reasonable to say he only gets 1 year, one spring, one fall camp with those guys. That's it. The other guys, you're looking at multiple camps, multiple springs, and multiple seasons. So I feel confident that he is a coach and developer based upon the resume you just read off.
And it's going to be interesting too, Sean, because if it is Joe Rudolph, ultimately, what does that mean for Chris Watt? Is he a guy that you try to retain? Because I know obviously Notre Dame would like to keep Chris Watt, but I don't know what the future holds for him in that regard. So it's going to be interesting if Joe Rudolph ultimately is the guy. We'll obviously keep close tabs, man. BoarsIrishBreakdown.com as we continue to get all the intel we can on that regard. We had just a request here from Irish for Life, who just said, please pray for me, health, pain. Irish for Life, just want to send out good thoughts and prayers to you, sir, or madam. I shouldn't assume. My apologies there. But hoping for increase in health and whatever you're working through. You know that Irish Breakdown is a community that always has your back. So hoping and I hope everybody, out there just could throw a quick, if you're not a person that believes in the power of prayer, which is totally fine. You just want to throw in some good thoughts in the chat, though. That would be really nice for Irish for Life. So appreciate you so much. Sean, a little bit more of a lighthearted question, but it is a super chat from Shaquille Oatmeal. Question: oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip cookies?
Is this even a debate?
I mean, for some people, I guess, if it's a question, I don't know.
I'm an oatmeal raisin guy. I'm sorry.
Are you? Oh, I thought you were going to go complete opposite. I thought you were going to say it was chocolate chip without even thinking about it, man.
Oatmeal raisin guy. That's why Potbelly has the best of both worlds with the oatmeal raisin chocolate chip cookie. It's the best of both worlds.
My two old man takes. Okay, here are my two old man takes. I love oatmeal raisin cookies. That's one. I love carrot cake. That's my other old man take. Okay, so those are my two old man cakes.
I'm right there with you.
In this conversation, though, it's chocolate chip cookie easily. It's not even close in my opinion. But I do like oatmeal raisin, so I'm not discriminating. If you put an oatmeal raisin cookie in front of me, I'll eat it. And I'll enjoy it, and I'll be very happy. But for me, it's got to be chocolate chip, man. That's the OG, man. It's the OG.
Peak oatmeal raisin defeats peak chocolate chip for me.
You think so?
If you're giving me both at their best.
Huh. So you're saying
peak oatmeal.
So are you saying, to use scouting terms here, are you saying that chocolate chip cookies have the higher floor, but an elite oatmeal raisin has a higher ceiling? Is that what you're saying to me, sir?
It's two competitors, heavyweight in the dessert game. They come into the ring, both have incredible length. Both have toughness. They can go 15 rounds if need be. They can knock you out in the first. They both can, fight you as a technician and box you. It's just a tough fight, man. It is a pick'em. It is a pick'em. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to roll with the oatmeal raisin, man. At its best. I think if they both fight their fight, oatmeal raisin comes out with the victory.
But my next question would be, what are your thoughts on a salty Virginia peanut cookie? What are your thoughts on that?
I would love to try it. I've never had it.
Maybe Salty can send some our way, man. I'm just throwing a little shade at Salty because he's insulting my choice of chocolate chip
Salty,
cookie, man.
I thought Salty had his own cookie brand for a second. Salty, stop being stingy. Send some our way.
All right, Sean, here's the next question. What's the best cookie? If you had a choice of any cookie, let's open that conversation up.
We're talking about brand or
no, I'm talking about a type of cookie. A type of cookie. Not brand necessarily, just because I'm quite partial to in Christmas time when you get the peanut butter cookie with the Hershey Kiss in the middle, right? Yes. Yeah. That's good, but also they can also put a Reese cup instead of the Hershey Kiss. Yes.
Insomnia cookies, which are strategically located all around the country near college campuses, which is genius marketing, by the way. Because, they're open. People are coming in there buying cookies at 2 a.m. College kids are always up.
Yes.
They have a limited cookie, I think, that comes out prior to Easter, like right before Easter, and runs for like maybe a month.
Okay.
And it is a lemon white chocolate cookie. And
Lemon white chocolate cookie.
lemon white
Yeah.
chocolate cookie. And it
Okay.
is, I can't, because lemon you can mess up.
You can.
Like when you put lemon into any dessert, it has to be the right amount of lemon. And they have found a way to find the perfect lemon combination and combine. It's a combination that you would not think of,
Yes.
but it is absolutely amazing. And it only comes out literally like for a month at Insomnia Cookies. It is the best cookie I have ever had.
I am quite partial to lemon. Like I love the lemon flavor. You know, I do like the lemon flavor. So maybe I'm not a huge white chocolate fan though. It's a little sweet. It's a little sweet.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the lemon works well with it, to whereas the lemon is really the dominant flavor in the cookie.
Yeah.
And then like the chocolate is like a support to the lemon. So it just takes it over the top. Like if you love lemon, it makes you love lemon even more with the support of that white chocolate. I was shocked. I was shocked. I remember when my mom first opened the box and told me, like, you have to try this. And I'm like, lemon and white chocolate? I'm like,
right. Sounds like a weird combination.
I love lemon like you. And I'm like, dude, they're about to mess this up. Like, they're about to mess it up. And dude, I get mad at, man, I promise you, because my family we frequent Insomnia here in Chicago. There are like 4 locations near all the colleges and universities. So we frequent it. Like my sisters will go if they go in the city, they stop on the way back and they'll call and say, do you want some? Of course. Yeah. You know, I tell them all the time, I get an oatmeal raisin and 1 chocolate chip all the time. But I've been begging Insomnia to make this cookie like a mainstay. Like, please. Why do you punish me by having it for 1 month and then take it away from me for like 11 months? It's like that's punishing.
You need to buy in bulk, man. Just need to buy in bulk, I guess.
Right. Or either go to the internet and find out the recipe and just make it myself.
Yeah.
Or attempt to make it myself.
That's so funny. That's so funny, man.
People
keep asking, I thought we already hit on it, but people keep asking, is Chris Watt staying? We have no idea because we don't know, one, if Joe Rudolph's 100% going to be offered tomorrow. We don't know that. If he is, we don't know if he's going to stay. We have no idea. We'll find out, though. We'll find out. We always find out. But great question, Shaquille Oatmeal. And fun one. Definitely a fun one. Let's go. US MA87 said, asked a couple of times, haven't heard an answer yet. Is Notre Dame interested in Wes Pritchett's kid? So it's Lawson Pritchett, right? If I remember correctly, isn't that? Yeah.
It's 2 kids, Lawson and Marshall.
Yeah. So I know both of them have been on campus, Sean. Obviously, they don't have offers, right? So I think Notre Dame's just maintaining a relationship, and if one of them develops into that type of guy, then there will be obviously some interest there. But I don't think it's anything substantial right now, other than their Notre Dame legacies, obviously. So
yeah, I think Marshall has really good interest from schools in the ACC. I know North Carolina and Clemson.
So there's
interested in him.
So one's a tight end and one's a safety. Is Lawson the safety and Marshall's the tight end? Is that what it is?
Well, Marshall is actually getting a look at safety and wide receiver.
Okay, so he's the safety.
If I'm not mistaken. Marshall's the younger one. The older one is a tight end, and he's getting looks, from some schools. Marshall's the better prospect.
Gotcha.
Marshall's the better prospect. We actually interviewed Marshall on the podcast.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, he's really good. Fun interview.
Yeah.
Really, really fun interview because we got into it with him about music and stuff, and he's a really fun interview. He was just transferring schools to go to the school that his brother was playing for.
Okay.
And then he had a great break. He had a really good junior season.
Nice.
So Yeah, but I think Clemson is like the major school that likes him because he had a really good camp at Clemson.
Nice. Good for him,
Yeah,
man.
really
That's
good camp at
awesome.
Clemson. Hey, by the way, just so
Yeah.
you know, there are what? What's closer to you, Hoboken or Ewing, New Jersey?
Ewing is closer than Hoboken.
Okay, so you have an insomnia cookie in Ewing and one in New Brunswick as well. Just so you know.
Okay. New Brunswick's not that far either.
Yeah,
Hoboken's a little up north, North
a little up
Jersey.
north.
I'm more in the central part of the state, central
Yeah.
south part of the state. But yeah. All right. Well, it's good to know. It's good to know. Let's go to this one, Sean from Brandon Plesner. I think he had a couple back to back. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointing is the recent defensive recruiting update? I say 8. That's how disappointing. I mean, so of course, Brandon's talking about the update on the message board. Obviously, it's nothing that we haven't talked about a ton. You know, Notre Dame's got a couple corners in the class. They're trying to get a third corner. You know, it's kind of one of the big updates. And we talked about a couple players, obviously, on the board. Talked about safety recruiting and a couple interesting safeties that Notre Dame is very high on. And I think that there's those players are reciprocated interest. The troubling area that I know Brandon's talking about is that linebacker recruiting and defensive line recruiting, there's some nice names on the board, but it's like, where's the traction, right? Like, which guys is Notre Dame really pushing for? Which one are they not? So how disappointing is it, Sean? I think from an all-encompassing, I would be like a 7, I guess, 6.5, 7, because I haven't completely hit like the emergency mode because there are still a lot of defensive line, although I'm not a fan of what Al Washington has done from a defensive line recruiting perspective so far in 2024. They still have some guys on the board that I think Notre Dame is in a pretty dang good position with. It could have a good defensive line group, right? So I'm like a 6.5 or a 7, Brandon. It's definitely troubling, but I don't think it's like eject button. This is the worst thing ever type of feel. I don't know if you agree, Sean, or disagree, but
Yeah, I wouldn't. I might be a 3.
oh, really? Not even high at all. Okay.
No, because for me, everything hinges on one guy. And I think we all know who that guy is from a defensive standpoint. If Notre Dame gets him to commit, I think from that standpoint, things will begin to roll. I think the Smith twins, you look, Notre Dame's in the running. You know, is are they going to have to battle against top programs? Absolutely. Uh, I think you could be disappointed in what Elijah Rushing and how things might
Nigel
have gone with
Smith.
him, Nigel Smith. Yeah, the way things might have gone with guys like that. Yeah, absolutely. I understand that. You know, but you have to be excited about the direction of the defensive backs. The linebacker situation was trending a certain way, and then James Laurinaitis kind of hit a pause button on certain things that might have been taking place with the linebackers. So now you wait to see how they solidify that. They go out, they get a new linebacker coach, GA. He'll get his opportunity to make his imprint in recruiting along with Marcus Freeman. And that's the thing. I have confidence that one position that will be fine because of Marcus Freeman in recruiting, that's the linebacker position, because that's the history the last 2 years. Eventually, they get good linebackers in the defensive class. So, defensive back, linebacker, should you worry about safety? Yeah, okay. I can worry about that.
I'm actually not that worried about safety, man. I'm worried about linebacker, though. I really am.
But I'm saying if the fans are worried about safety because they look at the last 2 classes and say, okay, I can understand that, and I can understand, if your disappointment is at 7 or 8. But for me, and I'll be going to watch Justin Scott play Wednesday. We talked this weekend on Saturday, and we're going to talk after the game. And I still feel confident where Notre Dame sits with him. He speaks the same way about Notre Dame today as he spoke about them. When he had a actual commitment date. And vibes around everybody pretty much predicting that he was signing with Notre Dame. Like everything is the same, So we'll see. Once March 1st hits and he starts to because right now he's in I think this is the sectional And this game is the sectional. They play Western House on Wednesday, and they win that game. They go to the super sectional, and a super sectional was the game that decides who goes downstate for this championship. So, conceivably, he could be playing for another 2-3 weeks, if they continue to win. And if that's the case, then he might not get to make a visit until late March at the earliest, going into April. So, and they have a good enough team that they can make that run. So, like I said, I'll chat it up with him Wednesday and really try to dig and see where his head is. But he's locked in on basketball right now.
And a lot is going to hinge on the defensive line recruiting if they're able to get Justin Scott or not. That's obviously a big that's why I'm not freaking out yet, Sean, because I still think they're in a good spot with Justin Scott. So, like, as long as they get Justin Scott and they get some, like, toolsy guys around him, I'm like, all right, we're all right. We're good here. We're good here. So we'll see. I want to knock this one out real quick because I think I said something about it earlier, but I just want to reiterate. Free just said, any news on Elijah Rushing? Man, I hope he visits. I wouldn't hold my breath on that one, my friends. I think that ship has sailed a little bit. So, they really like Elijah Rushing. They made their run early. It was in a decent spot, but just not any traction anymore. So Elijah Rushing isn't coming to Notre Dame. It just is what it is. So I'm going to keep on trucking. Got another question from Brandon Plesner, Sean. He said, didn't Joe Rudolph miss out on Billy Schrouth while at Wisconsin? Ouch. And obviously Billy Schrouth is from Wisconsin. I would say this, Sean. Yes, he did, but I think Wisconsin also signed. There were like 3 highly recruited Wisconsin offensive linemen that year, right?
He got one of the 3. Yeah. Shroud came to Notre Dame, and I forget the other young man. He went to North Carolina.
Yeah. So, he got one of them. I know it's a bad miss. It is. But also, I mean, there was some writing on the wall that Joe Rudolph might be out after that cycle, and stuff happens, man. So yeah, he missed out on Schroth though. You're right.
And that's I would be fair to Joe Rudolph in that situation, that the Billy Schrouth thing. I think if Billy Schrouth, if we go back to his recruitment, there were some things happening around the Wisconsin program at that point in time that made it easy for guys from Wisconsin to leave.
Yeah.
And, go to North Carolina. Or it wasn't like the program at Wisconsin was at peak Barry Alvarez, Brett Bielema level. And no one was getting out of the state. Things had changed, right? Because I think, was that like right after? No, that wasn't right after Bielema had gotten let go. Was that the Anderson? Was that right after Anderson?
Gary Anderson?
Had come in?
Can't remember.
He was at Wisconsin for a year.
Yeah, something like 2 years, maybe something like that. Yeah,
but it was just a weird time. Like,
you looking that up?
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. If I remember correctly, it was just a weird. So Bielema left in 2012, of course, to go to Arkansas. And Alvarez came in. Gary Anderson was 13 and 14. And then Paul Chris came back in 15. So like I said, that was a very weird time of uncertainty that you had guys, watching the program. And then Chris was there from 15 through 22. And he kind of restored it a little bit, but it never got back to where Bielema and Barry Alvarez had it. So for me, I think those uneasy times made it a little bit easier for the best talent in Wisconsin to kind of lead along the offensive line. Like when guys like Joe Thomas would have never and did not leave the state of Wisconsin. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You didn't get those guys. I think just the transitions and things and how they were going, it kind of just led to, the program not really. Because if I'm not mistaken, there are a lot of coaches around the state, and I remember this vividly. When Anderson left, he alienated so many of the coaches, high school coaches in Wisconsin, that they really had to come in and like do a lot of healing around the state.
Yeah,
with the coaches in order to just kind of, put the usual gate around the state of Wisconsin at the position of tight end, offensive line, and defensive line. And maybe Billy Schrouf is one of those guys that leaked out because of those things that happen.
And I would say this about it too, Sean, is because I know Brandon put in the Carson Hinsman was the other offensive lineman. Joe Brunner ended up at Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Carson Hinsman ended up at Ohio State, and then Billy Schrouf ended up at Notre Dame. I believe, if I remember correctly, though, Billy Schrouf was going to go to Wisconsin, and then Tommy Rees gave him a big assist on that one, right, and got him to come to Notre Dame, if I remember correctly, right? So, I mean, there's just some context there, right? I mean, if Billy Schrouf ends up at Wisconsin, you got 2 out of 3 of the big fish in your pond, and it's like, yeah, sure, cool type of thing, right? I mean, but losing guys to Ohio State and Notre Dame, is that like a, oh my God, how can you lose? It's not like you lost them to like these, underwhelming type of schools type of thing. So I just think there's some context. We're going to get to 2 more questions here, and then we're going to get out of here, Sean. We had an interesting one from Tommy Guns. It was a 2-parter. So Ryan, and I'm going to include Sean in this one because he is also a father. Are there any words that your daughter mispronounces or words that you use with her that you wouldn't normally use with other adults, that you let slip sometimes, etc., potty instead of bathroom? That's funny. You know what? One for me, Sean. So it's like something that you say, but if you were around adults, you'd be like, oops, I need to stop saying that because I just say it around. My daughter, Juliet, she says waters all the time instead of like, go get a glass of water. Like, can I have some waters? So sometimes like my family would be around or like friends would be around and be like, yeah, you guys want some waters? And I'd be like, oh, no, I just meant water. Like, you don't have waters. That's a funny one though. Let me think. There's got to be like a food-related one that's like, nuggies, like chicken nuggets. You want some nuggies? You want some nuggies for dinner? That's another one. Yeah.
My daughter, it was all about restaurants. Like, it was pie pies. Like, Daddy, can I have some pie pies? And she would set it around everybody. I'm like, hey, look, the girl can read books. So if she mispronounces one word, I really don't care right now. She's a baby. It was pie pies. And she would call me by my first name in front of people.
Ooh.
But that was she was the only child. So she would walk around the house and hear her mom say, my first name. And so she would, every now and then, around people, like, Sean. And then say what she had to say. And I really didn't, I knew what it came from. So I didn't trip. She didn't do it a lot. But every now and then she would slip up and call me by my first name. Yeah.
That's funny.
It was cool. It was cool with me, though, because I understood where it came from. My wife is not about to walk around the house calling me daddy. I'm sorry.
That's so funny, man.
So, like, it's so funny, right? Because your daughter, for the time she was the only child, like, her interaction was pretty much with you guys, right? So, like, if you just paid attention, you could just see her brain just, like, moving, like, at this crazy rate. And you can see how it started to, like, impact how she communicated, some of the things she said. Now that you're about to have an addition, oh, man, the younger one is going to be, like, accelerated. Because now, that's the company. Big brother or little sister are going to have an older sister that is going to be that communicator for them. So, yeah, your next one will probably be walking in like 6 months.
Probably.
Talking in like.
Dude, she's so much more active in my wife's stomach than Juliet was. Like, she never moved. This baby's just like
all over the place.
Like, what the heck is happening there, man? All right, last question, Sean. Yeah, one for you, my friends. Archer said, mailbag for Sean. What do you hope the Bears do in the 2023 NFL Draft?
Look, Ryan, true story. I almost hit my wife in the eye this morning. And I woke up with a ping from my phone at about 6:15, and it was a tweet from Adam Schefter saying that multiple teams have already offered the Bears packages for the number 1 pick. And my arms went out, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I was that excited. Look, this is my prediction. The Bears will make a trade with the Houston Texans and go from 1 to 2. They will then go from 2 to 7 or 8 and pick up more picks.
Okay.
And end up with 2 first-round picks this year, multiple seconds this year, and a first and second next year. They're going to move back twice. I predict that. The Houston Texans, I believe DeMeco Ryans already knows he wants Bryce Young. He has to get up to 1. Going from 2 to 1 isn't that pricey.
No.
It's not that pricey, right? So they'll have to give up a number 1 next year probably. They'll swap picks, 1 and 2, give up a second this year, something like that. Maybe another third or second next year, something like that. That sounds reasonable.
Sure.
And then it's going to be a battle between the Colts at 4, the Panthers, the Las Vegas Raiders, and what's the other team? It's like 3 teams at 7, 8, and 9 that need quarterbacks.
Panthers are 9. Panthers are at 9.
So I think the Raiders are 8 or 7.
I could look it up. I'll look it up real quick.
All 3 teams from 7 to 9, I know for a fact, need quarterbacks. And those 3 teams, I'm pretty sure, are going to contact the Bears at some point.
Falcons?
The Falcons. There you go.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that they'll contact the Bears. The Bears, in my opinion, are going to move back twice, pick up a boatload of picks, and still be able to get their offensive tackle, Pete Skoronski, in my opinion. Ryan, dude, there's no reason to ever go to a Northwestern football game. Ever. Ryan Poles went to 4 Northwestern football games. 4.
He was looking at the quarterback play, man. He was looking at the quarterback play.
There you go. There you go. You said it. I didn't.
Peter Skoronski's the only real. I mean, they had Cameron Mitchell, who's a decent corner, but yeah, that's really only the draft process. Well, they have Evan Hall running back. Maybe you want another running back too. I don't know.
I don't think Evan Hall is a reason. If you can watch Evan Hall from the comforts of your home.
Yes, true.
He was there for that Ohio State game where it was like raining sideways and like crazy. Yeah, he went to see Peter Skoronski. So if they get that dude and they can pick up extra picks, it might hurt because you have to pass on Will Anderson, but you're building a roster, man. You need picks.
Yeah.
You need picks, right? And if you're going to pass on Carter and Will Anderson, this defensive class is the class to do it because it's deep enough to be able to get solid guys. Late first, second, third, you can find some guys.
Well, there you have it. So Sean Davis predicting 2 trade backs for the Chicago Bears to kick off the draft. And I hope, man, I love chaos the day of draft. So make that happen. So, but that is going to do it for the mailbag today. Before you all leave, just a couple program notes again. Tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern time, IB Nation Sports Talk will be with Sean Stiers and Brian Driscoll. He'll have a lot to say about the offensive line coach hiring for Notre Dame, possibly Joe Rudolph over the next couple of days. It seems like that's kind of where it's trending. But don't jump the gun because it has not been offered yet. He has not had his interview until tomorrow. Make sure to tune in for that tonight, though. The rest of the week, every show will be at 2 o'clock Eastern time at the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I will not be a part of those shows. I will be down in Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine, but there might be some live shows at night discussing the NFL Scouting Combine. So make sure you stay locked in. Subscribe to Irish Breakdown Podcast and Irish Breakdown on YouTube and any of your favorite podcast platforms. You also should go make sure you're following CFB Nation, which is where I most likely will be streaming if I do stream. So 2 o'clock the rest of the week. I'll be back next week with Brian, of course. I'll be back next week with Sean on Monday for the recruiting hour. But I want to thank you all so much for joining me, and I hope you all enjoy the content for the rest of the week. It's going to be a crazy week in Notre Dame football, as it always is. So from Sean, I am Ryan. Thank you all for joining the Notre Dame recruiting hour on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.
See you guys.